sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia. Bills and the Sabres and the Ambers. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Gene's a big timer, a social misfit. Clueless to the title of the biggest buskeg hits. Chuck Muncie's goons have the last say. So thanks for your time, Mr. Mayo. Danger likes his cold ones and he likes his bears. But this is Rochester, cute Francesa.
Oh, who cares?
He's critical of Sean, he's critical of Alan. Of course he married Sandy, cause she's Italian. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
A moment of pride to start off the show this afternoon, if I may, Gene Battaglia. I know that, you and many sports fans out there, you raise your children, they play a sport or they become fans of a team that you root for. I know that your son is kind of watched you as a Mets fan and kind of gone his own path, right? He's like, yeah, nah.
I kind of like the Jays.
He's kind of into the Jays.
That's fine. I think that's totally cool. But he's into the Bills and Sabres, so we share some things.
I've got 2 nights in a row now under my belt where my oldest daughter, Leah, who's 20, has watched football with me out in the garage now. We watched the Sunday night game, of course, with the Bills, and then last night she came out and she was curious and she was asking questions about both of the games that were happening. She likes Tua. She likes Mike McDaniel. She likes, I told her a little bit about what's going on with the Dolphins, and her opinion on both of those players changed pretty quickly. And then she was fascinated by the Seahawks and Lions game and how there was just constant scoring, and she's asking questions, and I've got her. She's engaged, and we're going to a Bears game on Sunday. And I said, you know what? I'm going to initiate you. It's time for initiation. We're done watching Monday Night Football. Late night last night. Get done watching Monday Night Football. We're going to watch the 85 Bears 30 for 30, you and I. We're going to watch it together. And we did. We made it through the whole. She saw it, and she's like, how long is this? I'm like, And I looked, it was like, ooh, it's like an hour and 42 minutes long. It's going to be a late night. And I'm like, we'll just watch until you say you don't want to watch anymore. And then and it got her. It was gripping. She watched the whole we watched the whole thing, and now she gets it. Now she understands why her old man is the way I am with my fandom and why.
Oh, maybe that's a key for anybody who can't connect on the Bills. Like, do we sit down and watch
the Four Falls?
The Four Falls of Buffalo.
Watch the Four Falls season 3, 30 for 30. The Four Falls and 85 Bears are back-to-back episodes.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, if you want to watch either of those two, you're in good hands and you're moving in the right direction. So I just have a little bit of pride right now that my daughter, not wanting to go into Soldier Field for her inaugural visit blind. She wants to know the history. She wants to know why I care about the team that I've followed since I was a child.
Well, it's funny how Lambeau Field, all the history, blah, 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 blah. Like, they don't have that sort of history in Chicago, too. Sure, there's more championships up in Green Bay, and maybe it's because, the Bears played for a few years there at Wrigley, and they didn't even play at Soldier Field until the 70s, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I think with Soldier Field, the thing that they always wanted was the columns, right? The column. They wanted, they keep that, and when they renovated the stadium, whatever, 20+ years ago, whatever it was now, they wanted to make sure to have that. I mean, look, the original charm of Soldier Field is gone, right? Like, it's not, you couldn't have an NFL stadium look the way old Soldier Field looked, so they had to do what they had to do. But I would imagine that, they're not going to continue to pour money into Soldier Field when what they really want is what you're describing. Like, if you had a new stadium, you could do a Bears Hall of Fame or a history of the Chicago Bears for what that's worth. I mean, let's face it, that's one of the original organizations. Hallis is a guy that there is no Green Bay Packers without George Hallis. There's no Chicago Bears without George Hallis. You could do a really cool kind of historic thing around that team and around a new stadium. You could do it around Soldier Field. They're not going to do it around Soldier Field. They're going to make some money with a new stadium at some point, you would think. But, so I just – I'm a little groggy today, but it was well worth it to not only watch the doubleheader of Monday Night Football, but then also to spend an additional hour and a half plus with my daughter. And, I forgot how emotional that 30 for 30 makes me.
Oh, that's the whole idea of a 30 for 30.
Damn, dude.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
welling
broken
up
dreams.
I'm welling up at the end of it, man. Buddy Ryan writing a letter to his players before he passes, and all of the players, including guys like Mike Singletary, that, all of them are Gary Fensick, just emotional guys reading this letter from their aging and soon-to-be deceased former coach, Buddy Ryan, how much he meant to that team and how much dysfunction existed within that locker room. And it was just it's an unbelievable, unmatched story in the NFL. And man, it would be nice if my daughter could have a team that she could latch onto because they're good and they do it the right way and they've got character all at the same time, which is kind of what that team had all at once.
Oh, I'd love it. She'd be like, Dad, I'm going to be a Bills fan. Come on, Leah.
I wouldn't look. I'm not going to stop her from that either. I mean, this is what's in her proximity. This is what she's grown up with. Truthfully, her first football game was a Bills game. It was the Dolphins game last year, and she and I had a blast. So I would be okay with that. If she said that, I would be like. There is a part of me that doesn't want her to go through this existence that I've gone through for years. I imagine it's very similar to what you've gone through as a Mets fan. You're celebrating your 11th postseason appearance this year, and you just kind of brace yourself for the impending disappointment. I feel this way with the Bears every single year, and I know a lot of Bills fans felt that way, especially during the drought. It's natural.
Yeah, it's great your team makes the playoffs, but the idea that in the NFL there are 14 teams that make the playoffs, and 13 of the 14, their fan bases are going to be crushed at the end of the season. And same thing goes with baseball. We have 12 teams in the Major League Baseball postseason that starts. Here's what I got to say before we line up and tell you who's on the show here today. Yesterday, it reminded me that's what we love about sports. We all work hard. We have families. We got to take care of things. We have friends. But if we just have an outlet where everything else in the world just doesn't matter, and you could just let your emotions roll. That's what we do this for. That's why you watch the Bills or your favorite baseball team. And for me yesterday, being on the air when your team is down to start 3-0, and then they go up 6-3, and then the villain, Mike Catalana, comes on the show.
Villain.
My villain.
Yeah.
Comes on the show. All of a sudden the Mets blow it right on. I'm furious, but I'm in the middle of the show here. I have to be a professional. I can't, show too much emotion. And then conversely, the Mets pull it out there. And again, I can't show too much emotion.
Well, your adversary, Catalana, I mean, it was uncanny for him to show up yesterday afternoon with the Mets up, only to see the Mets blow the lead while we were having a conversation with your adversary. And then we go to break, and that's when the Mets get the 2-run homer from the real MVP, from Lindor, and advance. So we've got a lot of Major League Baseball today, and it feels good to flip the calendar to October and have a 4-game slate of wild card action in Major League Baseball's postseason. We'll talk about that throughout the course of the afternoon, share some of our insights, some of our picks, who we like to move on and advance from this opening round here, 4 games throughout the course of the day. Today, we will also get back to the NFL and talk some fantasy football later this afternoon. Michael F. Florio, talking fantasy from NFL Network. He stops by at 4:25.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to him on a Tuesday because it is waiver wire day here in the NFL. And all right, now we're kind of coming up here on some bye weeks and some other things. We've got a London game to kind of contend with too. How do you optimize your lineup? What might be available in some of these leagues? Our buddy Michael F. Florio will be joining us at 4:25.
And nobody cares about my fantasy team, but I had an instance last night that I know everybody that plays fantasy football can relate to. The old you lose based on the kneel down at the end of the game. And it came down to Jared Goff's kneel downs at the end of last night's game. I think going into last night, I want to say I had like a 3% chance of winning. I needed my kicker, and I had the Detroit kicker. I had Jared Goff going, and Goff had a great game. Obviously, no incomplete passes, threw for 3, caught 1, and I get back into this thing, and the 2 kneel downs, I lose by a fraction of a point because of the 2 kneel downs.
I'm sorry, bud.
Yeah,
that hurts.
If you're a fantasy football player and you hear my voice right now and you've had that happen to you, you know the pain, you know the anger. I'm friends with my opponent. I'm going to reach out to her and absolutely just unload. I'm just going to unload. I need to get it off my chest, and I'm going to get that done after we get off the air tonight.
I think last night might be against your take, Danger. Like, you are not a fan of the 2 games on a Monday night. Well, I would say thank you, NFL, for putting 2 games on a Monday night, because, boy, oh boy, if we only had Titans-Dolphins last night, we'd be questioning.
I almost feel like Titans and Dolphins are like, we don't even want that game on a Sunday afternoon. Like, where can we bury that game where the least amount of people will watch?
It's what we used to put on. That should be a Color Rush Thursday game.
Yeah,
really,
let's start burying more games on Thursday night. Let's give the Thursday night doubleheader some treatment here, because that was ugly. Will Levis is just bad. I mean, and now injured. I mean, is it Mason Rudolph time? Does Mason Rudolph give you the best chance to win in Tennessee? I think the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, but that's as good as it's going to get for Mason Rudolph. It wasn't all that. You have to find out if Will Levis is going to be the guy. Will Levis plays football like an idiot. He does. Like, for people that want to criticize Josh Allen, this guy is taking unnecessary hits, unnecessary chances, and he lands on his shoulder last night. So, to me, it was only a matter of time. Yeah, and all of a sudden you feel, boy, you're a Bills fan. It's like it's kind of the Will Smith meme when he's standing in the room all alone, I guess. Like, wait a second. What happened to the AFC East here for the Buffalo Bills?
So as bad as it might get for the Buffalo Bills, at least you could look around and be like, well, we're still head and shoulders better than the rest of the division. Matt Perino, covering the Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard, is going to stop by the sports bar here in about 10-15 minutes or so, and we'll get the latest out of Orchard Park as the Bills prepare for their matchup Sunday afternoon against the Houston Texans.
Yeah, as the Bills today signing a player off the Ravens practice squad, a rookie, a defensive tackle, Zion Logue, I believe that is how you pronounce his name. I don't know too much about it, but I think the move says something, Danger. One, you can't sign somebody to your active team. You have to put him on your active roster. So there has to be a corresponding move coming up with the Buffalo Bills. And secondly, look at the position that he plays, defensive tackle. Is that something that the Bills recognized last week and said, no, that's not good enough. We're not going to be facing a Derrick Henry, a Lamar Jackson combo every week, certainly, but we need to figure out what's behind Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver.
We appreciate you stopping by the sports bar, listening or watching, however you may be doing so, at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the free-to-download Odyssey app, where we sound our best, your smart device, when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. And we appreciate the viewers that we have on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester and our stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/The Fan Rochester as well. You can engage with us on Elon's Twitter. That's X. We're at The Fan Rochester there. And you can call us as well at 866-4326-585, 866-4FAN. The table is set.
Yeah, as today, the Bills not practicing, so they'll be back at it tomorrow. And as we mentioned, the one roster move. We do have this story out of Vegas, Danger. Did you see this? And they were talking a little bit about this. You know, it's kind of a big story if Brownie and Tasker are kind of like, wait, what is this going on in Vegas today? They're discussing. So Davante Adams, can we say he hasn't been happy as a Raider? I think that's kind of fair to say.
I mean, he put up good numbers his first year there, I feel like, and ever since it's been like a carousel of quarterbacks and dysfunction and coaching changes, and it's been a mess. It's been a bit of a mess.
So, now Sports Illustrated isn't what it used to be. It's just, now it's basically AI, right? It's just an ag site or whatever it is. So, whatever I see from Sports Illustrated, I'm putting like zero thought into it. Unless somebody else is putting some thought into it. Somebody noticed on one of the Sports Illustrated aggregated sort of posts, and this is on Instagram, It's a post that basically wonders if Davante Adams has played his last down with the Las Vegas Raiders. And Danger, I know you're not one to be like, who likes the post, who doesn't like the post, who really cares? It's a big old Francesa. I don't think we've ever had a head coach kind of involve himself in something like this. Antonio Pierce liking the post that wonders if Adams has played his last down with the Raiders.
That is unbelievably childish. It is so petty and so juvenile, but it tells you everything you need to know that the coach and the player just aren't seeing eye to eye. You got an old school, tough-nosed, hard-nosed, defensive-minded head coach in Antonio Pierce and a guy who's trying to get his way out of the team that he's been a part of.
Yeah, and to kind of review, Adams missed the win over the Browns because there's a soft tissue injury, a hamstring pull, and that's always kind of tricky, right? Like, if you trust the player and you're trusting your training staff, the player's injured, you get him back when he's healthy. It's almost like your head coach is kind of questioning you should be out there or not. And I don't think I've ever seen a head coach use social media in this way to go against one of his players. Now it just leads me to wonder, my gosh, was whatever computer this was, Sports Illustrated, putting out, were they actually onto something?
Yeah, it's childish, it's juvenile, it's petty. Kind of like the drama, though. I'm not going to lie. Where does he go? I mean, it feels like this is the kind of thing that is something you can't come back from, right? It's not like he's going to reverse course. He's disgruntled. He wants out of Vegas. Where does he go?
Yeah, and his head coach just gave him the license to say, well, I can't play for this guy.
That's right.
I'm injured. What are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, he's not going to be injured the whole year with a hamstring injury. And coincidentally, the trade deadline coming up, and I'm sure he'll be healthy when that trade deadline is over.
Oh, yeah. Can
I imagine a world where, I don't know, there's a team that has a future Hall of Fame quarterback, and maybe they're underachieving, maybe they're 3-3, maybe they're 2-4, and they've got other issues, certainly, namely offensive line. They've got a defensive player that's holding out, but you know what? It's the lack of weapons for Aaron Rodgers. Like, don't the Raiders feel like a team? The Jets, I should say, feel like a team that would be flipping a high draft pick for the Raiders wide receiver.
They are the favorites. If you're looking at odds of the team that will next land Davante Adams, the Jets are favored at plus 400 to be the team to receive the services of Davante Adams in a trade. But there are many intriguing possibilities.
Well, they wouldn't go in division, wouldn't they?
I mean, if there's a team that needs a wide receiver right now that dropped, that just lost their top weapon for the season, the Chiefs are interesting for a couple of reasons. You're right. Would they trade within division? Yeah, probably not. But there was another disgruntled wide receiver on your TV last night, and I don't know that Tyreek Hill is going to go back to Kansas City or what kind of cap gymnastics you would need to do to make that happen, but that dude doesn't look happy. And the Chiefs need a wide receiver. They need a one. They don't really have it on this roster. It's going to rear its ugly head. I don't think you can sustain a season with Sky Moore or Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce. I think you need a dynamic player there, and you don't have it right now. Xavier Worthy is nice, but he's still a rookie, still learning. Maybe he improves through the course of the year. So I don't know that Adams to the Chiefs happens, but if you remember what it was like when the Patriot dynasty was going on, it just always felt like, oh, God, of course the Patriots got X player that was really good or sought after. Of course they found a way to make that work, and players find their ways on good teams. I don't know that the Chiefs make a deal with the Raiders or the Raiders make a deal with the Chiefs. A couple of other teams, though. If you're the Steelers, does adding Davante Adams make sense?
If you're being honest with yourself, no. Doesn't line up with the timeline, right? Because it's not Davante Adams and it's a one-year rental. You've got to absorb the rest of the contract and kind of figure that out too. So that's also kind of a problem. And if the Steelers don't have a long-term quarterback, My answer would be no. What about a team, and I pulled up the odds here too, Danger, at plus 500 in the Ravens. Now, you could say that's not the Ravens' offense. However, oh, gosh, he's better than Zay Flowers. Oh, my gosh, that would be a nightmare. Where do you even begin to defend? If you want to shade a safety over on Devontae Adams, well, guess what? We're going to hand off to Derrick Henry.
I think you've already got issues with trying to defend the Ravens' offense just from when they snap the ball. Are we defending Lamar? Are we defending Derrick Henry? Are we defending any of these wide receivers or tight ends? I mean, that's a tricky offense to defend, and, of course, Devontae Adams would only make it more challenging. Let's get to it.
Yeah, the odds I'm looking at, plus 600. Can we just have an honest conversation about the Bills' salary cap? And tell me how. Well, it's not real. You can go restructure. Blah, 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 blah. They can't even get rid of the kicker right now.
The highest paid player on the team right now?
Yeah, by base.
By base salary? Yeah. That's an unbelievable stat.
It's a gross stat. I'm watching old man Nick Folk last night. Yes, I did watch that game, Danger.
Oh, he looks like us out there, man.
Can we give a 7th round? I play for the Bills. Can the Bills give a 7th round pick for Nick Folk? They're not going anywhere.
Nick Folk is all of us. I love that guy. Watching him kick, I'm like, I was telling my daughter, I'm like, look at him. He looks just like us.
Nick Folk, he was always the afterthought. He was the roster gymnastics guy. Was Belichick? You know what? I need to bring you back last second, so don't sign anywhere. And they would bring him back.
Yeah.
He's just old man reliable. Yeah. That's all you need.
Well, it'll be worth following here. We do have drama out of Vegas. The Raiders always seem to deliver some sort of drama through the course of a season. I mean, it's not even Halloween yet. Are they going to fire Antonio Pierce at Halloween? Are they going to keep the streak alive? Antonio Pierce going to call his kids in from trick-or-treating? Daddy just got fired. Sorry.
No more trick-or-treating.
Trick-or-treating.
We got a family meeting. Dad got fired. They talk about childhood trauma. You imagine that?
Yeah.
My Halloween was ruined. Daddy brought us back.
That's a PSA coming soon to you here on the Fan Rochester.
If you get fired on Halloween, you know what? Wait till the next day to tell your kids.
It might be worth holding on to that thought. Let them enjoy their night. We'll get to Matt Perino next here on the Fan Rochester. Talks of Bills and Texans. Put a bow on what we saw Sunday night as well. This new signing off of the Falcons practice squad. We'll get to all of that and more next here on the Fan Rochester.
You're listening to the update.
According to Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, the Bills signing a defensive tackle off the Falcons practice squad. His name is Zion Logue. As for this opponent, head coach Sean McDermott on the Texans.
Very skilled team. They already had a good team coming off of last year's team. So it's going to be a big challenge for us, again, going into their place. And they're highly skilled at those key positions, as you mentioned, defensive line, wide receiver.
We'll get the thoughts of Matt Perino, Syracuse Post Standard, and the Shout podcast. Matt joining us next year in the Sports Bar. Major League Baseball playoffs are underway. In the top of the fourth, the Tigers leading the Astros 3-0. Coming up at 4, the Royals and Orioles, although the tarp is on the field right now in Baltimore. Mets and Brewers at 5:30, the Braves and Padres on at 8:30. Gene Battaglia in the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Straight up with no chaser. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
You're back in the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Talk some Bills with Matt Perino covering the team for the Syracuse Post Standard, Syracuse.com. Good to join us on a Tuesday afternoon as he does every week here in the Sports Bar. Matt, I want to try and turn the page from what we saw on Sunday night as quickly as possible when so much went on. I want to try and be logical and think to myself that the Bills aren't as bad as what we saw on Sunday night. The Ravens aren't as good as what we saw on Sunday night, and those kind of losses don't happen too often under Sean McDermott. We expect a different outcome come this Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game, right? And if you take the totality of the first 4 games, and that is one of them, of course, that's going to be the one that concerns you the most from a fan perspective, from an organizational perspective. You know, over the years, there's been these pockets of time where Sean McDermott, as good as that defense has been consistently, there's been times when they've really struggled against a really good physical ground game. And so those kind of fears start to pop up as well. I thought it was a good game plan, and I think it was a Bills team that just didn't adjust quick enough in a couple of key moments. You know, going back and watching that game, there was a couple of them over the course of that contest. Any little thing could have changed the course of it. I mean, the Keon Coleman drop, obviously the early decision on 4th and 2, which, you know, I'm critical of it only from the perspective of you've gone the last 2 weeks, and I know you were a little bit closer to the goal line, but you've come up with plays on 4th and 2 or 3 yards to find a way to sustain a drive. And I think against that team on the road, you don't want to let them get into their comfort zone. The Baltimore Ravens love playing from ahead. They love leaning into that ground game. And this is a team that's been gashed by big run plays before, and they're without 3 starters. I mean, I know we've downplayed this, and we've talked about Cam Lewis, and we've talked about Balen Spector. And honestly, I think the 2 of them have done a really nice job considering, you know, who they're playing for. But I don't think you could discount the fact that, you know, Taron Johnson was so good in that game 2 years ago. It's one of the things I talked about going into the game, going back and looking in 2022. He didn't have a single missed tackle in that game against Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, and Cam Lewis had 4 on Sunday. It's hard to overcome those moments, but again, it's almost a good thing that happened when it did, because now when there are going to be a couple physical run teams, you're probably going to see Christian McCaffrey down the stretch in December. I mean, you're going to be able to lean back on this game and what didn't go well, and from a Bills fans perspective, hopefully correct it.
Yeah, Matt, we have this one roster move, not officially from the Bills yet, but from Tom Pelissero. Zion Logue, and hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, was a 6th-round pick of the Falcons this year, was on the practice squad, so that means he's free for the taking, but now the Bills must keep him on the 53, and I guess what would be the possibilities? You got to make room here. Does somebody perhaps go on IR? And is this kind of a message that, well, we need to kind of get better, whatever is at the defensive tackle position?
I don't know. There's a couple of moves they could probably make. I know they brought Will Clapp onto the 53-man roster. That could be something. I know they like to keep that number of offensive linemen on the team. Sean McDermott spoke to the media yesterday, and the only real update was that Taylor Rapp was in the concussion protocol, and it's pretty rare to see somebody go on IR in that kind of situation. So we'll have to wait and see what the team announces, but I'm not surprised they addressed the position. I thought that they were super light at defensive tackle, relying on a guy in Austin Johnson who I get his connection to Daquan Jones and everything, and Daquan Jones talked him up a ton in the offseason, but he's been pretty average, like a journeyman kind of guy that you're asking to kind of settle into that number 3 spot with Dwayne Carter, a rookie. You hope for the best, but it's they haven't been super comfortable giving him any kind of predominant role in the defense. They were almost forced into it the other day, and I think that's why they're going to bring in this guy who is absolutely massive. I mean, he stands like 6'6", 320. It's a spot where they need to find more consistency, and I think it's ironic sometimes with the way that the Bills bring in guys on the defensive line. They do a good job of turning that over year to year and finding new pieces that get people excited. I think Tim Settle, dampened a lot of the spirits over the course of his time here. But remember, when they signed him out of Washington, a lot of people thought he was going to be really good, and me included. I liked a lot of what I read. I liked a lot of what I saw, and he just never found a role here. He's in Houston now, and it wasn't great to let this last game. I don't think that the Houston Texans played a particularly great game, but he's had a really good start there for them. And you wonder why he wasn't able to ever find any footing in the Buffalo defense. But they have to find some answers, and it's kind of been a disappointing start for Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones too, when those are the two guys you really need to lean on in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, inconsistent, I would say. And I'm curious if we know anything here going into a week of practice on the status of Terrell Bernard, on the status of Johnson, knowing that you've got Cam Lewis and those 4 missed tackles fresh from your memory on Sunday night. I mean, are we going to see a return of Taron Johnson and Terrell Bernard, do you think, as soon as maybe this Sunday?
I think Bernard's the one that I'm really watching, and Sean McDermott kind of said that he's going to be the guy that probably has a chance, at the very least, to practice in a larger capacity than last week when he was in the red non-contact jersey. It still feels like Taron Johnson's a bit of a pipe dream, working back from that injured forearm. But we'll have to see. Like if he works his way back into practice starting tomorrow, then we can really start to have the conversation. If he's not on the practice field tomorrow, I'm really hesitant to say that his chances are good. I'm not as concerned this week with even without both of those guys, because you're not facing a very physical, solid run game. I mean, check this out, guys. Joe Mixon in week 1 for the Houston Texans runs for 159 yards, and everybody's talking about, whoa, wait a second here. The Texans going to be this dual threat, great running team. The last 3 weeks, and I know Mixon's been banged up, but the last 3 weeks, and he was part of the first game, they've totaled 164 yards in the 3 games amongst their running backs. So this isn't a team that's really scaring you on the ground, and I think it's going to be all about coverage. I think they do that really well, especially in their dime package. And I think Matt Milano or Bobby Babbitt said it best yesterday when he was asked about Cam Lewis's play. It's like he's a guy that's going to be as motivated as anybody to get back and fix the problems that popped up last week and potentially have a bounce back performance this week. And I would actually bet on Cam Lewis if he has to play, having a really good game and finding a way to make an impact, specifically because of the matchup.
Talking to Matt Perino, Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post Standard, our guest. Of course, there's one storyline. I'm sure the national media will kind of grab to hear Collinsworth the other night say the Bills, bring up Stephon Diggs. Yes, this is going to be a storyline. I guess as we're all going to revisit everything this week, Matt, here, do you expect that? Is there anything? What would be the chances we'll actually learn something that we didn't know? Part one of the question, and part two of the question, I guess, with the way the Bills handle things internally when it comes to situations like this, and Diggs himself, do we just kind of expect, there not to be any quotes that'll be inflammatory, that everybody will be just kind of professional about this?
I mean, we kind of got a head start on it last week with Josh Allen going out of his way to bring up that his comments after the Jags game weren't any kind of veiled shot at former teammates. And I followed up and asked him specifically, and he kind of mentioned that he's got all the love in the world for Stephon Diggs, and that's what I expect actually on both sides. And I know Diggs had that story in GQ where he kind of, went in a little bit on the way that it ended and maybe some philosophical differences. And that's the thing with Stephon Diggs. Like, if he's not on board with the vision for an offense, like, he's going to check out pretty quickly. And I think both sides probably got to the point in that relationship that realized, we needed each other when we got together. And over the course of the marriage, we realized that we both needed something different. Like Stephon Diggs needs to feel like he's needed. He's going to be featured, even in Houston, with the way that sometimes it feels like they're forcing the ball to him, despite having this freak athlete in Nico Collins that is the obvious number one wide receiver. I'd imagine that becomes an issue over the course of the season, especially when Tank Dell, who's missed the last couple of games, gets back. We'll track his progress this week. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. And they have Dalton Schultz, who you can make an argument is a fringe top 10 tight end kind of guy. And, where do you go with all these targets? I don't know. And this is an offensive line for the Texans who I have a lot of questions about, especially being able to hold up in pass coverage or in pass protection. The one thing I really noticed watching that game, and that was a Jaguars front that had no success against the Bills' offensive line a week ago. They were getting pressure on C.J. Stroud, 19 pressures in that game. They were only able to sack him twice. You have to, when you get back there and you affect him, you have to hit him. You have to get him down. He's a little bit slippery. He's not super mobile. He's not super quick. But if he gets off of that one look, he moves in the pocket and evades pretty well. So that's going to be something that I'm looking at this week. I don't think you're going to see any bulletin board material, especially on the Bills side, because I'd imagine those are part of the marching orders from McDermott this week.
Matt, it's funny how one botched trick play shines a bright, interrogation light on all affected, right? Like Joe Brady now, what are you doing with that play call at that time? And Curtis Samuel, can we find a way to use Curtis Samuel? You signed him to a 3-year deal, and he hasn't really put up any numbers through 4 weeks of the season. And Josh Allen, my God, is he okay? Protect yourself. What are we doing? I'm more curious about the Samuel piece of all that. I think Brady recognizes bad play call, bad time, won't happen again. Josh Allen is bumped and bruised. Everybody is this time of year. He's a warrior. He's going to be fine. But what do you make of their lack of usage or their lack of ability to find a way to use Curtis Samuel more in this offense? We came into with the expectation that the relationship with he and Brady from their time together in Carolina was going to equal sweet music, and we've yet to see it really, Matt.
I don't know. I wonder if there's any subconscious strain against overly involving Samuel because, and this is just me guessing, this is nothing that I've ever heard or anything like that. But if you're Brady and all you've been talking about all summer is everybody eats, and then you turn around and you're giving a single guy that you have a history with a big chunk of the target share. I don't know. Maybe there's a subconscious, desire to lean into, maybe at your detriment at times, this model that everybody is going to be a part of the offense. I don't know how you can look at that game objectively if you're the coaching staff and say that 6 targets and 1 catch is a good model for an offense for Mac Hollins. I think you have to move completely away from that, especially in a game where when Curtis Samuel has been involved as a receiver early this season, and it's a very small sample size, good things have happened on those plays. And the thing, too, is there's so much creative potential with him as a player. There's so many times he's in the backfield, and I'm like, okay, he's going to go in motion. They're going to find a way to get him in on a running screen, get the ball in his hands, and it's they don't. And even Dalton Kincaid's usage to another degree, and he's been more involved than Samuel, obviously, but there's so much opportunity. This week, if you could find a way to get him on Petrie, the safety for Houston, you have to spam that to a degree. And maybe that goes against the offensive philosophy, and then you're going to have to answer questions about, is Dalton Kincaid the feature piece of this offense? Well, maybe he should be. Maybe he should be because he's a first-round draft pick, and that's what we were kind of told that he was brought here to be, and it hasn't felt like that. Sometimes when I look down on the field and he's on the sideline, I'm perplexed because it's he should be playing 80 to 90% of the snaps at least, and some people like to say he's not a great blocker. So what? Line him up outside. Put Dawson Knox in line. He has to be on the field because he's one of your best players. He should have made that catch on the 3rd down play. But for the most part, he's been about as reliable as you can get, and I just don't think that they've been smart enough with how they're trying to get to the ball in the hands of their true legit playmakers. Coleman, they did a good job of that in this last game. He had a lot of opportunities, made some, didn't make some. He's a rookie. But Kincaid, Shakir, Curtis Samuel especially. They got to get these guys going.
Yeah, Matt, it's a question. It's a storyline we've been talking about since Fisher, probably since before that. Are we comfortable, as you brought up, with the back end of this receiving core? And before you came on, we're bringing up the story about Davante Adams, and is he, going to be on his way out in Vegas, the coach liking a post, whatever it is. You can't bet on this stuff in New York State, I should mention, but there are odds out there right now. And the team that has the fourth best odds to trade for Davante Adams, they're actually putting the Bills at plus 600. Matt, I would not advise that with the Bills cap situation, but I will ask you the question, and maybe I'm the first to ask you this because they're not coming up till that first Tuesday in November. I mean, are the Bills likely, if you had to say any position this year, it would be wide receiver they would be looking at?
I think it's defensive line. I'm going defensive line at this point over that, and that's an edge rusher. That's a interior defensive lineman. I mean, Sean McDermott basically said they couldn't put Von Miller on the field in that Baltimore Ravens game because of the situations, because he can't be out there in first and second down when you got to be able to stop the run. That's trouble as arguably your number 1A or 1B edge rusher, depending on how you want to slice that up. I know Rousseau's probably the 1A at this stage in both of their careers, but you're paying Von Miller even with the contract restructure to be that. So I think defensive line is much more where I'd be. And the Davante Adams thing is tricky. If he's going to turn 32 in December, I think he's still a really good player, and I think that you add him to the mix here, and he becomes a bona fide A, and you almost and you let kind of Keon Coleman, learn behind him and maybe kind of trying to pick his spots to be a part of this thing, or maybe downplay Mac Hollins' role. I just think financially it's going to be almost impossible. And I also I watched the receiver show, and I've been watching this play out in Las Vegas, and I'm not down on Adams' reaction to all this. It's got to be tough to go there to play with, your buddy Derek Carr, and then he gets shipped off, and everything that's happened with that team. But I just haven't loved the vibes around this guy. And look at some of the dudes that the vibes have been a problem. Like Michael Thomas before it ended up blowing up in New Orleans. You have Jamar Chase in Cincinnati. I know he wants the contract, but how much has his body language, his general attitude been a reason why they're losing? And I'd put Stephon Diggs last season in that same category. Some of the stuff around his relationships and his attitude, I just think the vibes sometimes are not worth adding to a situation that, despite the loss this last week, has been really good in Buffalo.
Well, Matt, one thing that we can say based on how the league has looked through 4 weeks, if you're just looking at the AFC East in a vacuum, it sure seems like the Bills' problems are minimal compared to the rest of the division, and that bodes well for the rest of the season and their chances of making the postseason. Before we let you go, I wanted to make sure you have plenty of time to tell us about what you and Ryan are working on the Shout Pod and what we can check out at Syracuse.com this week in advance of Sunday afternoon.
Well, I don't know if they have the banner up in New Jersey yet for the off-season Super Bowl championship that everybody was trying to hand out, but I do agree. I had Trey Wingo on the show this morning. We talked about this. I thought it was about as on the money, a national perspective of the Jets as I've heard. I am very much just not a Robert Saleh head coach fan. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great defensive mind. I think that he'll probably end up being a great defensive coordinator somewhere after he eventually time runs out there. But yeah, I'm not a big believer in the Jets. I'm going to hang up here, and I'm welcoming on Jonathan M. Alexander from the Houston Chronicle live on Shout. We're going to take an early look at Texans, Bills, talk a little Stephon Diggs, what it's been like out there, and how these two teams kind of match up. We'll have our Staples show heading out to Houston on Saturday, and just your usual coverage.
Nice. Matt, appreciate the time, and thanks so much. Looking forward to doing this again.
All right, guys, take care.
You got it. Matt Perino. He covers the Bills for Syracuse.com, the Syracuse Post-Standard. You can hear he and Ryan Talbot on the Shout podcast. And, Trey Wingo with that national perspective. Always fun getting the national guy's perspective, but I really do like digging in deeper. Like, we're going to talk later this week. We're going to go to Houston. We're going to go to one of our favorites in Houston later this week to learn more about the Texans.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Seth Payne, Victor native, will be joining us Thursday. And then Maggie Gray joins us.
Oh, Bills fan, Maggie Gray.
Yeah. Now, I was going to bring this up to you off air, but let me tell you the story real quick.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I am on vacation. Like, this has happened to us a lot, right? Like, you're walking and you see, wait, is that so-and-so? No, it can't be.
I think you told me
I told you this. Okay.
That you were in Nantucket?
Nantucket Sound, and town is Yarmouth. And I'm walking on the beach with Allie, my daughter, and it's a cloudy day, it's misting. And when somebody's coming at you the other direction, you only have like half a second to kind of like, recognize. So I'm not like staring at somebody on the beach. It's literally like boom, boom, person walking by. And I thought, oh, that looks like, nah, it can't be. Like, and I just keep walking. And that's the last I thought of it until I get back from vacation and I hear Maggie Gray talking about her great vacation, the exact spot I was in. I literally walked by her.
That's funny.
So I just want to establish the ground rules. I didn't big league her.
Oh, you don't think so?
No.
Because she doesn't know who you are. Oh, man. Did I big league somebody the other day? I was nervous that I may have big leagued somebody the other day. Oh, you know what it was? And he might even be listening right now, so let me apologize because he's somebody that we know. He's somebody we used to work with. Whit. I saw Whit at the New York State Broadcasters Association awards luncheon last week. And Whit, came up to me, and I was surrounded by other people and kind of conversing with other people. It's like, man, I love listening to you guys. You still sound great. I listen to you every day, and I didn't really get a chance. And he's in our fantasy football league. I mean, I certainly could have engaged him. I thanked him, and I tried to be gracious with it, but I also knew I was distracted.
Yeah.
So I wasn't fully engaged in my conversation with Whit, and I felt bad about it afterwards. And then immediately my mind thought, oh my God! Did I just Battaglia Whit? Did I just big time Battaglia Whit? I didn't mean to do that. I hope he doesn't take it that way. He's one of my favorite people that we've worked with, and I know he listens to the show. So Whit, if you're listening, dude, if you felt I big timed you, please accept my apologies. That wasn't my intention. However, if it was Gene you were trying to talk to, it was absolutely his intention to big time you, just like he did Maggie Gray. While they were on vacation.
Like you said, Maggie Gray wouldn't know. Yeah. She wouldn't know me from Matt. I only know her because, they're also, on video and everything
stream,
else. Yeah, they stream, yeah.
Well, that'll be fun. Tomorrow, Maggie Gray joins us at 4:25 for Maggie and Perloff here on the Fan Rochester. And then we'll also get some winners for this weekend's action in pro and college football from PJ Glasser, the host of Send It In. And you mentioned Seth Payne Thursday. Yeah. That's going to be great.
Can I, before we go to break here, I just want to ask you the question I asked Matt Perino because, hey, this is going to be louder and louder and louder. What should the Bills go shopping for the trade deadline? Is it a wide receiver? Matt says no. Pass rusher would be the top priority.
I feel like that's on. Like, that's absolutely right because we know how important it is for Sean McDermott. It is defense, defensive-minded head coach, his defense that he gets an adequate, rush in either in the middle or on the edge. AJ Epineza feels like he's been invisible this year. That's a guy that you kept, in free agency. He's made a play. He makes like a play every other game. I feel like that's what I feel like with AJ Epineza. Rousseau, for as good as he was week one.
Yeah, look, nobody had a good game. Yep. Like the Ravens game. Like, who had a good game? Dorian Williams played. Really? I saw Dorian Williams chasing Hill down that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was just an overall poor performance and the inconsistency in the middle of that defensive line with Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver, I think, is a massive concern.
I would say this. You're looking in the wrong direction if you're looking for Devontae Adams. I do think the Bills will be trying. They always do, but how many people, ourselves included, are like, oh my gosh, they got Rasul Douglas. Yes. Nobody said that. It was more like, wow, he must not be good if the Packers are kind of giving up on him. You know what? He was as key as anybody on the back end.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Bills recognized it. And the thing was, Danger, he was somebody who had a contract that was, I can't remember if it was expiring or was set to expire one more year after that.
It was easy.
It was very easy. So you bring in an Adams, it's beyond this year. So you're going to bring in, I want to say rental, but like somebody that is going to be, you can either easily move off of if it does not work out.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep you posted on what we hear, what we find out of Vegas with the Devontae Adams. It appears the Devontae Adams sweepstakes are officially on. We appreciate Matt Perino stopping by to share the latest, his insights around the Bills as they get ready for their matchup in Houston against the Texans. You'll be able to hear that action with our pregame coverage starting at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, right after the Italian Carousel. Kickoff at 1 o'clock.
Make sure you get your soccer scores
from Italy.
The latest.
We're going to come back with some more next here on The Fan, including Michael F. Florio, talk some fantasy football, NFL Network. And if you think that Brandon Beane has mismanaged this roster or the Bills' salary cap in any way, shape, or form, and I know that I talk a lot about the dead cap and how the Bills have the second most dead cap in the league, but there is a team that committed roster management malpractice this offseason, and it is glaring, and it is so obvious going into this last offseason that they of all teams needed to address this position with great care, and they did not, and it is now biting them in the ass, and I will explain who that team is and why I expect changes.
Yeah, and crisis management. You're in a position, you're accused of a crime. You've been accused of betting on baseball. I mean, that's the lesson I hear. Look, we've gone a whole hour without talking. Like every other show in America has addressed Pete Rose and what did he kind of mean.
Quickly, can you explain Charlie Hustle to me? Because it was he kind of like came up. I'm obviously aware of him, but I don't know the origin of Charlie Hustle. How does Pete Rose go from Pete Rose to Charlie Hustle?
You don't know the story?
No, I don't.
Okay. Charlie, he played in the league so long, okay? It's a spring training game. Of course I know this story, Danger.
That's why I'm asking. I'm going to the authority.
Baseball writer.
I'm going to the authority.
It's a spring training game against the Yankees, Reds and Yankees, and Pete Rose goes in. Nobody knows this kid. He's 19 or whatever, and he draws a walk. And what do you do when you walk? You walk.
Yeah.
Except he runs down to first base. It's so Whitey Ford of the Yankees is on the bench right next to Mickey Mantle. It's like, look at Charlie Hustle here. Just like kind of mocking him.
Uh-huh.
And then that just kind of stuck. But then he took it kind of as a badge of honor kind of thing. Like, this is going to be my persona.
So his opponents dubbed him Charlie Hustle.
Yeah, and so every time he walked in his career, he actually ran down the first base. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that story. I was trying to figure out how he went from Pete Rose to Charlie Hustle because there's no connection there other than now it makes sense. Somebody mocking somebody saying, hey, look at this guy.
Here's the other thing, too, because the initial story I read in the New York Times, last night, he graduates from high school. The Reds had drafted him. What does he do upon his graduation from high school? He books a flight to Rochester, New York.
What?
Rochester, New York, where then he takes a 45-minute drive to nearby Geneva, where he begins his minor league career.
All right, so Pete Rose is one of us. Rochesterian Pete Rose. You don't want that one?
I don't.
You don't want the hit king on our roster, on our ledger? You don't want that to claim that guy? We're so provincial. We don't.
It's the disease of Rochester. Like, oh my gosh, they mentioned Rochester in the Pete Rose obit. I can't believe.
So great. We'll get into that and more next. Michael F. Florio also joining us next hour. We'll talk some fantasy football. 866-4FAN if you want to join us. 585-866-4326.
Streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
A roster move upcoming for the Bills. Tom Pelissero reporting the Bills have signed defensive tackle Zion Logue off the Falcons practice squad. That is not officially up from the Bills. Head coach Sean McDermott gives us an injury update.
TB is improving. Both are improving. TB probably more so at this point. We'll see how the week flows for both of them. I do expect TB to be practicing at some point during the week. Taryn, a little bit more of a question mark at this point. We'll see how it goes.
TB being Terrell Bernard. Major League Baseball playoffs. The Tigers leading the Astros 3-0. They are now in the top of the 6. The tarp is off. They're ready for baseball in Baltimore, just underway. It's game 1 between the Royals and the Orioles. Mets and Brewers at 5:30. The Braves and Padres get going at 8:30. Gene Battaglia in the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
We begin to turn the page to the Houston Texans.
I think that they're probably very closely matched teams, and the Bills are going to be motivated to bounce back and bounce back in a big way. But this is an important game against an AFC opponent that this might be another team you've got to get through in January if you ultimately want to get to the, to the Super Bowl.
But yeah, everybody's going to be talking about Diggs this week, but it's about just winning the game.
Mike Danger.
You could argue that the biggest loser in the Bills-Ravens outcome is actually the Houston Texans. Do you really think the Bills are going to do that 2 games in a row?
Gene Battaglia.
This would be a real fun one to get. I think you want this one more than you want the Ravens one, right? You're facing the guy who left you, who caused a bunch of issues on the way out. I do like the way things set up, so you should feel fairly confident this team is going to bounce back this week.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
You know how you're watching a baseball game on ESPN now and they put the win probability above the score? I don't know if I like that or not, but I'm only bringing it up because you have it in fantasy football as well. Most of your leagues you're in, depending on your platform, you have the win probability, and it changes based on how your players perform through the course of the weekend. And going into last night, Gino, I think I had like a 2% win probability. I'm like, I got Jared Goff and the Lions kicker, and I'm down like 30-plus points. It's like, no shot at all. And lo and behold, Jared Goff has a great game. No incompletions. Yeah. It catches a touchdown pass from Amon-Ra St. Brown. All of this is working in my favor. And then a couple of kneel downs, and I lose by a fraction of a point. These are the heartache moments, the heartbreak that occur during a fantasy football season. We're going to welcome in Michael F. Florio to help us regroup, and
that's what Van Pelt always used to do. Bad beat.
It's a
terrible beat.
Just a bad beat.
That is the worst beat. If you were curious, you brought it up. Tigers now with an 86% win probability. Only up 3-0.
I know.
I mean, that seems a little high.
I want to believe what they throw out there when they throw these numbers out there. This is like looking at their football power index, right? Like the Bills, I think, had a 60% chance or a 58% chance of beating the Ravens, according to ESPN's football power index. And it's data. It's more.
It's just a tool. I just love this time of year because you know what? We're getting great sports in the middle of the afternoon. Like. You could say, what is the elite season? But I don't think there's any question. This is the elite sports month. Where
October is the best month of the year, right?
Right. When we get the so-called sports equinoxes, when you're going to get all 4 leagues. And then, by the way, college football, you could say, has never been better than it is right now with this new format. It's a great time of year. We'll keep you updated throughout the show on some of the baseball here. As we mentioned, the update just underway in Baltimore, and the Tigers leading Houston 3-0 all the way. The Tigers actually putting a runner now on first, so maybe they're going. Look, Tariq Skubal is really, really good at baseball for Detroit, and this is this format. If the Tigers steal Game 1,
now this is the series I didn't touch. I didn't do anything with this series, but I put my money where my mouth is. Let me just roll out what I'm playing here,
all right,
and expect the opposite to happen. I do have the Orioles sweeping the Royals. Orioles minus a game and a half.
I don't like that whatsoever. I'm just being honest. Like, have you seen the Orioles go down the stretch?
Neither team down the stretch has been good. The Royals
have been kind of bad.
They've struggled down the stretch as well. Earmuffs, Gene. Brewers money line. I don't think it's a sweep, but
I'm not going to argue.
Series money line.
Freddie Peralta is really dealing for Milwaukee, so he's getting the start today.
Padres minus a game and a half in the series against the Braves.
That feels like a lock.
Padres sweep.
No.
And Yankee fans, if you want to blame somebody, if it doesn't go your way, I'm going to put myself out there. I will fall on the sword, and I will tell you that I am betting the Yankees to win the World Series.
The one thing baseball does that other sports don't necessarily do, they keep the brackets intact, Danger. In the NFL, no. In the NFL, no. Like, if you're the Chiefs and the 7th seed beat the 2, you're getting the 7th, 1 versus 7. In baseball, they do not do that.
Yanks would get the Orioles if the Orioles advance, right?
That's right.
They get the win of the Orioles series.
Orioles and Royals.
Right.
Where you would think, wait a second, if the Tigers pull this off, you would think they don't do that. That's so right. Now, all of a sudden, you're a Guardians fan. You're like, oh my gosh, go Tigers! Yeah, the clouds are lifting. Yeah, we could take out the Tigers. Come on, we won the division.
Very familiar opponents, of course. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. But I do. Now, like I said, if it doesn't go your way, Yankee fan, I'll be the guy. I'll be the mush. Okay, you can go ahead and blame me.
I'm going to take a different angle on this. Say you're a Red Sox fan, a Cubs fan, a Giants fan, any team that missed the postseason, but you love the sport, right? But did you really love Texas, Arizona? I mean, sure, I guess the baseball was okay, but I'm just talking about, hey, you want to see the country get excited about this. If you want to see baseball get to a numbers. I'm talking TV ratings, that standpoint that they haven't been in a long, long time, then pull for Ohtani and Judge. I mean, the Yankees and Dodgers. Yankees, Dodgers. I know, Danger, you were saying Yankees, Phillies. I'm like, no.
Well, the reason why I say Yankees, Phillies is just for my own selfish reasons. I think it would be just violent. I think it would just be entertaining from a stance of two fan bases that probably don't think very highly of each other. Two cities that don't like each other.
Well, then why aren't you rooting for the Mets against the Brewers?
Or the Mets against the Yankees?
No. You would have the Mets Phillies. That's the bracket.
That would be fun.
Oh,
that would be fun too.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be fun too.
No, look, Yankees Phillies would be a lot of fun. Certainly. I
get what
Yankees,
you're saying,
anybody,
though.
But yeah, you can't. No offense to Guardian fans, but like if we get a World Series of Guardians and Brewers,
Guardians and Padres, yeah,
I
hear what you're saying. We had a doubleheader last night in Monday Night Football. One game was wildly entertaining. One game not so much. Mm-hmm. If there was one team in the NFL this offseason that had to secure their backup quarterback position, it was the Miami Dolphins. How do you go into the season without a plan to back up Tua Tagovailoa, given his history, given the idea that he's been concussed as many times as he has? And now you're effed. You are done. Your season's over. You're not coming back from this. Embarrassing loss to the Titans. The Titans get off the schneid. You lose to Mason Rudolph. Now you've got Tyreek Hill frustrated. He's pulling his act. Mike McDaniel looks disengaged. The whole team looks disengaged. This is roster management malpractice by Chris Greer, and I can't believe when you consider some of the options that were available to everybody. Sam Darnold was available to everybody. You had Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, he had a 2-game suspension, but familiarity with Mike McDaniel from their time together in San Francisco. You could have gotten any of these guys. You settled for Skylar Thompson.
I think that's the lesson to be learned here, and I'm going to draw an analogy. Actually, the Sabres, like the Sabres, I think began this terrible streak of not making the postseason because, well, TM and the guy before him, they just looked at their own talent and thought, oh, we got the guys. where no, you need to evaluate your own guys more critically than others. And I think what the Dolphins did was, hey, we like Skylar Thompson. He played really well in that playoff loss in Buffalo. Remember that? He's our guy. No.
Furthermore, I mean, that's a knock on Greer, right? That's roster mismanagement on Greer. But Mike McDaniel is embarrassing himself as well. Any respect or favor that guy has garnered through his head coaching career is out the window. Look around the league, man. Look at guys from the Shanahan coaching tree that have done more with less than what Mike McDaniel has done whenever Tua has a concussion. This guy isn't some sort of wild genius, crazy mad scientist. He might just be a burnout, dude. He just isn't the dude. He's not the guy. He can't make anything in that offense work unless Tua's behind center. And when I think of a guy like LaFleur in Green Bay doing what he did for 2 games with Malik Willis, or Kevin O'Connell doing what he's doing with Sam Darnold, it makes no sense to me that this guy gets praise or has gotten praise when he's shown now he can't get it done unless his guy is behind center. And I don't even know that his guy is coming back.
No, I think Danger, and I can understand Sam Darnold getting paid $10 million in Minnesota. And we raised an eyebrow at that point. Like, wait a second, you're paying Sam Darnold $10 million? Well, that looks like such a bargain now. So I'm not going to fault the Dolphins for going out that, but guys like Taylor Heineke, Tyrod, just get the career backup that could at least guide you, because you and I and many other people believe that, boy, this shouldn't happen. But I think Tua's coming back. I am going to cringe when he's back on the field. And the idea is, all right, can we win a few games? Again, you could be upset that the Bills got waxed in Baltimore, and we haven't seen that legitimately in 3 years, the Bills getting blown out in a game. But
look around.
Look at this division.
Look around, man. It's ugly.
This division is crap.
Rodgers is complaining about his knee being swollen, and he's starting to fall apart. They look terrible. They lost to the Broncos and a quarterback who only threw for 50% in 60 yards. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. So as bad as it was on Sunday night, when you kind of take stock and take inventory of where the Bills are, they're still the class of the division until somebody shows up and says something otherwise or shows through their actions that they can compete. I don't see it. I just don't see it. And what's going on in Miami is going to lead to people losing their jobs. Greer is going to lose his job. McDaniel is going to lose his job. You paid Tua. If he comes back, you're kind of stuck with him.
You're stuck with Tyreek Hill, too.
Yeah. It's a messy situation. And you're going to keep losing these games with backup quarterbacks that his offense, he can't make the offense work. He's not, for whatever reason, it's just not working with any of his backups. Where meanwhile, Malik Willis in Green Bay gets 2 wins with LaFleur. I don't know. That's coaching to me. That's a head coach who knows how to communicate with his quarterback and get the most out of somebody who might not have, who clearly won't have the same amount of talent as your starter does. And in Miami, it's an absolute disaster. If Mike White was their solution for Tua going down, shame on you.
Shame. Brad Rochester, welcome to the Sports Bar.
Hey,
What's
buddy.
up, Brad?
Hey, I'm wondering, is Jared Mayo going to be the second longest tenured coach in the AFC come next year?
Yeah, I think that's it.
AFC, yeah.
Mr. Mayo will
Mr.
be.
Mayo,
Mr. Mayo is already, you could argue Mr. Mayo is already the second best coach in the AFC East. Prove me wrong.
I got nothing.
Right. So, yes, to your point, yes, he will be the second longest tenured head coach by next season, Mr. Mayo in New England. And that's saying something, because New England doesn't look good either. And you could argue that even Mr. Mayo is incompetent at times by sticking with Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is cooked. There's nothing left in that dude's game.
No.
Nothing.
No, but he recognizes this is the painful approach we've got to take, and let's not get Drake May beat up. We'll see Drake May.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For sure, before the end of the season. Brad, thanks for the call. One call I did not let through, Danger, because I made the editorial decision. I don't want a history lesson. A baseball writer called up and wanted to talk Pete Rose. And I'm sorry, baseball writer. We're not going to, talk about Pete Rose and how he's staying the game and everything else. I mean, Danger, a lot has been written and said about the passing of Pete Rose. And let me try to give you a different angle here, and I think it's just very simple. I think it's just PR 101. Imagine on the day that Bart Giamatti bans Pete Rose from baseball. It's said, it's done, here's your punishment. Rose, instead of being defiant, and that's really what he's remembered for, right? In the face of this mountain of evidence, Rose saying something simple. I'm sorry. I'm flawed. I'm seeking help to cure my problems. I love this game, and I can't wait to get back. You know what? We all would have come around. Baseball would have gladly let him back in. I think the Hall of Fame eventually would have let him in if he just did that at the beginning. But decades of defiance drove a wedge here. Don't be mad at baseball. Pete Rose did this to himself, or the people advising Pete Rose gave him bad advice. And the PR lesson is very, very simple. Come clean. Move on.
I'm not mad at baseball, but I am mad at Baseball Writer. I think Baseball Writer sucks. I think Pete Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I know I'm not alone in believing that. I don't care if he apologized or didn't apologize or how he dealt with it. He bet on baseball, sure. He is the hit king. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. I also believe that all of the steroid era users, the steroid era guys that they're keeping out, Bonds, Clemens, McGuire, Sosa, et cetera, I think they're the baseball writers that are allowing in guys who were using. David Ortiz is a Hall of Famer, but these guys aren't because David Ortiz was nice to you and Barry Bonds wasn't. I think the Hall of Fame is a joke. I don't think it matters. I think we all know as sports fans, we all know who is good. We all know who belongs, even if they're not officially in there. And if you're Pete Rose, do you really care? At his dying days, do you think he really cared?
Well, I would say this. Okay, they let him in the Hall. Yay. He's not a household name. Honestly, like even kids today might not know Pete Rose, but Pete Rose made more money because of his plight. Honestly, believe that, Danger. Like, he would have been fired as a manager, and that would have been it. And then where
he would always be the hit king.
He would always be.
He would always be the hit king.
Right. But like his autograph, like it becomes more of a story that he's sitting outside of the Hall every year in Cooperstown.
I don't have. Look, I understand your point, and I think your point is valid. But that's not in his character, and that's not in the character of a lot of people. There are a lot of people that will do something wrong, but in their warped sense of their own reality, they don't believe that it was wrong, or they won't apologize. They just refuse to apologize. They will never apologize. You will never get Pete Rose, when he was with us, to say, I'm sorry I did that, or show remorse for doing what he did.
Well, and this is kind of what Baseball Writer wanted to talk about. Like, imagine, like, today. Okay, Josh Allen, here is $500 million. We're going to throw the Super Bowl. Great. And the Bills go out there and we find this afterward. Oh, my gosh. Like, that really happened? And then everybody gets banned. That legitimately happened in baseball. Not that much money, but back then, the Black Sox scandal.
Sure.
And that's why baseball has always been, the only one rule. Imagine that. A World Series actually happened where a team threw it.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you go back to the product? Well, they had to, like, really go out there and just make sure there was never, ever, ever going to be, even to how many years this is after this happened? Some 60 years after that happened? Rose wasn't alive for the Chicago Black Sox. I've read about it.
I just think I remember the player. I remember the scandal. I remember the reaction to the scandal. I don't disagree with what you're saying. He probably benefited more from being who he was and being defiant and not getting in the Hall. Financially benefited more. I don't really have a problem with Pete Rose. In my mind, he will always be the hit king. And to me, if he's not in the Hall, that's fine.
Well,
he's one of the most famous baseball players I remember growing up.
There was a take, and a good take is one that stops you dead in your tracks. John Heyman, of all people, put this out, that Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame because Bart Giamatti handed down a lifetime ban.
Yeah, he's dead.
He's dead.
Yeah.
Now you put him in.
Yeah, it'll probably happen. I mean, it would make sense if that were to happen. It would absolutely make sense. It wouldn't be fair, but it's such, to me, it's meaningless. It really is, man. I mean, when you consider the names, the players, the stars of the game, who, yes, were doing what everybody else was doing at that time, but maybe did it more, got caught doing it. I think it's all a joke. Those guys all belong in the Hall, including Pete Rose. But it's fine, and he'll be missed. That was one hell of a player, man. One hell of a player. We got Michael F. Florio, NFL Network. Talk some fantasy football next. Who's hot and who's cold in fantasy football, Gino?
Yeah, who is hot in fantasy football? We are going to go with a guy you saw last night. 3 touchdowns for Kenneth Walker. And not fantasy related, but did you see that play?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Fantastic. Yeah, so
where he couldn't get brought down and he rolls over and flips. I mean, it was like, Sean McDermott was probably excited. It looked like a wrestling move.
it did. And I'm actually concerned the Bills have to play the Seahawks end of the month there, so he is certainly hot. And then, oh, no, this guy is back on our list. 0 catches for Kyle Pitts in their win over the Saints. And their head coach saying he did more in that game. Well, okay, sure, he blocked. That doesn't help us in fantasy football.
I would add that anybody that catches a football in the Miami Dolphins offense is also ice cold right now, as you have Tyreek Hill pacing back and storming back and forth on the sideline furiously behind his head coach. Who's hot and who's cold in fantasy football, brought to you by AirQuip Heating and Air Conditioning. It's fun and challenging to know when to start a player that's heating up or bench one who's cooling off. It's not fun to be too hot or too cold in your home or business. Make the best lineup call you can and call AirQuip today. Michael F. Florio, more fantasy football from NFL Network next on The Fan.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Tom Pelissero reporting the Buffalo Bills have signed a defensive tackle, Zion Logue, off of the Falcons practice squad. The Bills have yet to make this official. Head coach Sean McDermott on the opponent, the Texans.
Very skilled team. They already had a good team coming off of last year's team, so it's going to be a big challenge for us, again, going into their place, and they're highly skilled at those key positions, as you mentioned, defensive line, wide receiver.
Meanwhile, this just in, Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams has requested a trade. This according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. We'll talk some fantasy football coming up next. NFL Network's Michael F. Florio joining us here in the Sports Bar. Baseball playoffs. Tigers leading the Astros 3-0 there in the 7th. No score in Baltimore between the Royals and the Orioles. Mets and Brewers at 5:30. Braves and Padres at 8:30. Gene Battaglia on the Sports Leader, the Fan Rochester.
Top Shelf Sports Talk. You're hanging out in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Going to need a little pick-me-up from our next guest because fantasy football is a roller coaster ride. We talk about how exhilarating it could be to get a win, know that you crushed your draft, hit on some of your late-round picks. It could also be soul-crushing when you come back from a 2% chance of winning, Michael F. Florio, only to see that lead evaporate on a kneel down on the final play of the game on Monday night by Jared Goff. It happened to yours truly, and it really has me questioning why. Why do I do – well, I know why I do this. I do this so we can talk to guys like you about how great it is and how much fun it is and who we want to pick up on a waiver wire Tuesday. Michael F. Florio back in the Sports Bar. Buddy, how are you?
I'm doing good. I am so sorry for you. I've played fantasy for over half my life. I have only had one game ever. Luckily, I was on the winning side, but one time ever has that happened to me where you gain or lose a point from the kneel down, and that changes the game. There is no worse loss than losing in that way. Terrible.
Absolutely terrible. Now, if we can, let's start with the news that Gene just talked about there in his update. Davante Adams, hey, look, big, huge, exaggerated air quotes here, hamstring injury. And we don't know what that is going to mean for him. And it sounds like he's played his last down in Oakland if he's in Vegas if he's requesting a trade. What are your thoughts on where Adams may land and what makes sense? And if you're an Adams owner, how are you treating this?
I think if you're an Adams manager, you're treating it right now like he's injured. Like you can't cut him, obviously. You can't play him if he's not playing. But I would plan on being without Davante Adams one way or another this week because even if he surprises us and suits up, he's getting Patrick Surtain and the Denver Broncos who just blank wide receiver ones each week. But, yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of teams out there that can use wide receivers right now, especially one that I still don't think he is what he was a few years ago, but he is still at one of the highest levels in the NFL in Davante Adams. The Bills could use that, but that is not a move the Bills tend to make, especially in season. The Chiefs are extremely thin there. The Steelers could be in play. There is a lot of teams. I don't think the Rams would go in, even though they need a wide receiver. But there's a lot of teams right now that could use a Davante Adams, and I don't think his price will be nearly as high as some people are thinking. But if you have him, you just got to continue to ride with him. But if you have him and you're sitting at like 1-3, you should be trying to trade him now because this could be something that lingers for a little bit of time. And if you're at 1-3, your season is not over yet. There's a lot of time left, but you don't have time to wait. So I would try to trade him now if I'm in that position. And if you're someone who's like 3-1 or 4-0, then you can go find that team that has Davante. And if they're in need of wins right away, then that's when you try to trade buy a loafer.
Yeah, this has been such a weird fantasy season. You're hoping that guys that you invested draft capital in do pan out. And the tight end position, Michael, it's been sketch for a lot of us, right? And let's start off because for folks who don't know, you are a Bills fan. Last hour we had Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard Shout podcast on with us, and we were talking about Dalton Kincaid, and Matt was wondering, why are there packages where you see Dalton Kincaid actually on the sideline? He should be like the number one target. And with the Bills going into Houston coming up this week, are we expecting kind of a bounce-back game for this Buffalo offense? And in your thoughts, should Kincaid actually kind of develop into that first option here for Josh Allen?
I agree with Matt. I don't understand why they pulled Kincaid at any point in the game and put him on the sideline. But that being said, he has averaged over 11 fantasy points per game the last 2 weeks, which might not sound like a lot, but that is elite at the state of the tight end position in 2024 right now.
That's sad.
It's sad, but I have Kincaid, and there's only a handful of tight ends I would rather have, like Jake Ferguson comes to mind, Trey McBride when healthy comes to mind. But after that, it thins out very fast. So I'm starting Kincaid everywhere I have him, even with this being a tough matchup on paper against the Texans. I think this is going to be a game that could potentially be higher scoring, could get a little bit more Josh Allen throwing. Plus, there's incentive on both sidelines. Diggs wants to show it to the Bills. Allen, I think he won't admit it, but I think he wants this one. This is one that I think both teams circled on the calendar. But this is one that I think the Bills bounce back in because I think they just match up so much better against Houston. The strength of the Texans is their wide receivers. The strength of the Bills' defense is their corners. The Ravens are one of one. They are the worst matchup for the Bills, but luckily the Bills don't have to play them again this year. It was one game. I think they bounced back in a big way against Houston, and I'm starting Kincaid and Khalil Shakir pretty much every week moving forward now.
Michael LaFlorio, NFL Network, talking some fantasy football on Waiver Wire Tuesday. Are we chasing production in the Chiefs' backfield if you're putting in a claim for Kareem Hunt? Let's face it, he didn't look like the old Kareem Hunt, but he was productive, and he had opportunities in that backfield. Sure feels like Carson Steele has fallen out of favor, and we'll also get Clyde Edwards-Helaire returning from NFI at some point here. How are you managing in a post-Isaiah Pacheco world for that Kansas City backfield, Michael?
I do think Kareem Hunt is the guy right now. Carson Steele had the fumble issues, and then we didn't really see him in that game. Samaje Perine oddly vultured the touchdown, but didn't get a whole bunch of pass game usage. Like you said, Kareem Hunt didn't look like Kareem Hunt, but he was the lead back on the Kansas City Chiefs offense. That is something we need to take note of. But you mentioned CEH, and I think that is a good thing to bring up. Look, if you need a running back, Kareem Hunt, 10 to 15% of your fab, something like that, I'm thinking. But I am putting in a lot of bids in my leagues for like $1, $2, maybe even $0 on CEH, because I think he is a player that will get overlooked. You could maybe sneak one past the goal. I don't know what he will be when he comes back, but he knows this offense. He's been a big part of it in recent years, so I think he will have an opportunity. And right now, everyone's just locked in on the players that we've seen and they've been on the field, but don't forget CEH. He's been there for the last 4 years, and he's led them up until Isaiah Pacheco arrived.
Yeah, we still don't have the definitive he's out for the season, Rashee Rice. We're bracing for the worst here, but we know he's not going to be there. And I'm looking at the depth chart here. I mean, okay, Juju, Sky Moore, Mecole. I mean, like, now the targets are going to go where? And I would think Kansas City has to be like at the top of the list of team trading for a wide receiver, are they not?
Yeah, you would think, but I don't know if the Raiders are going to want to be like, here's Devontae Adams, go win another Super Bowl, go win our division again. So they might have to shop out of the division for that one. But, yeah, it is bleak right now in Kansas City, pass catcher-wise at least. Xavier Worthy is already rostered on a bunch of leagues. He is going to have to step up. I think Travis Kelce is going to be the one primarily who steps up. And my theory of Kelce was just taking it easy in those early weeks is starting to look better and better. But if I'm taking a shot on a wide receiver here, Justin Watson and Juju are the two that I have been putting my bids in. And I'm not putting big bids at all, a lot of like $0, $1 bids, stuff like that. But those were the two that played the most snaps, ran the most routes this week after Rashee Rice got hurt. Sky Moore was in a limited role. All their other wide receivers were in a limited role. Watson is the deep threat. Juju is the red zone guy. Neither one is probably more than anything than a flex option, but you at least need to put in a bid and take the upside shot if you need wide receiver help.
Mike, the Colts knocked the Steelers from the ranks of the undefeated. They lose their quarterback in that game. Joe Flacco comes in. They hold on for the win, but late in that game, after he's been really a force so far this season, Jonathan Taylor has the dreaded high ankle sprain for a running back, and now you look at a guy who might be his clear number 2 which is Trey Sermon. What do we know about Sermon? Is he worth a pickup on your waiver wires? I imagine he's pretty widely available.
Yeah, he is very widely available, and he is worth picking up. I know they're saying it's a mild high ankle sprain for Jonathan Taylor, but anytime I hear high ankle sprain, I prepare for the worst. And Taylor is a player that does have a history of missing time with lower body injuries. I believe it was 2 years ago he missed time due to a high ankle sprain. So I'm putting in bids on Trey Sermon. I'm not going crazy or anything like that because he's Trey Sermon. He's been around the block a few times. We know who he is. But if he's going to be getting volume, we were saying stuff like this about Zach Moss last year, and then I know Moss finished as an RB2, but there were weeks where he was a very useful RB1 or at least gave you a safe floor. I have some teams that are desperate for running backs. I know I'm not the only one. So your situation dictates how aggressive you should be, but he is definitely someone that you should at least be putting in a bid this week because if Taylor misses time, he's going to get a lot of volume on a team that runs the ball a good amount, at least when Anthony Richardson is out there.
Yeah, if you're trying to decide, Michael F. Florio is our guest here. The tiebreaker of, hey, do I want to go with player A or player B? That's the beauty of, right, trying to figure out if you have a roster that has options here. Is it too soon to look at defenses, sorry for the vernacular, defenses that suck? I mean, if I'm looking at the bottom five right now in the league in terms of yards yielded per game, it goes like this, starting with the worst, they're going down. The Colts, the Rams, the Jaguars, the Eagles, the Panthers. Now, we know the Panthers aren't a good team, but of those other four teams, Colts, Rams, Jaguars, they're 0-4. What about the Eagles? Are we now to the point where that's a team that we actually want to load up and go against here?
You want to play wide receivers against the Eagles. They really struggle in the air, and they typically, well, at least when their guys are all healthy, score points of their own, which forces the other team to kind of put their foot on the gas a little bit. The Eagles, for a year plus now, have been doing a good job of shutting down running backs. In fact, coming into this last week, they were one of the few teams that had not allowed a touchdown to a running back so far this season, but they really struggled through the pass game, which is funny because in their Super Bowl year, they were one of the best secondaries in football, but ever since that Super Bowl appearance, it's gone downhill for them. So they are a team that you can get wide receivers against. And, like, with all of these defenses, like the Rams start everyone against them. Panthers, you start your running backs against them. The Jags are getting into the territory where, like, yeah, you can start everyone against them. But just because a team gives up a lot of yards, it still does matter whether that's through the air or on the ground, because some teams are great at stopping the run and awful against the pass, like the Lions. And then there's other teams that could stop the pass, but you can just run all over them. And that's kind of been the Colts so far this year.
Hey, Michael, with injuries taking a toll in some of these receiving cores, again, I'm going back to the waiver wire and looking for some players that you might be able to find that are available in your league that you maybe can get your hands on for a minimal investment in Green Bay. I want to get your thoughts on Dontavian Wicks with the Christian Watson high ankle injury. And we just mentioned Carolina. They do feel like a more competent offense, obviously, with Andy Dalton behind center. Adam Thielen out for multiple weeks. And the rookie, Xavier Legette, worth your time? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Dontavian Wicks, to me, is the big pickup of the week. And I'm actually suggesting you be very aggressive going after him. Like, I told some people 40% of my fab budget I would spend on him, which sounds very high, but Christian Watson is an IR candidate, and he already is someone who has missed a lot of time in the past. Wicks came through last year when he needed to start for the Packers. And then last week, 13 targets, I believe it was. He had over 200 air yards, 3 end zone targets, and Jordan Love is just playing. I mean, we've seen him play 2 games. He's looked the lights out in both of them. So I want pieces of the Packers offense, and Wicks is my preferred option, but Romeo Doubs is one that you can get for much cheaper than that because all the hype right now is on Wicks. So if Doubs is out there in your league, he is worth picking up. I think Tucker Kraft at the tight end position, also worth taking a flyer on. But you mentioned Legette. I'm in on Xavier Legette. After the Packers receivers, he is the one that I would most want this week because he is a promising rookie who he can stretch the field a little bit. He's really dangerous with the ball in his hands after the catch. And then he's on a team that is going to be trailing a lot, but finally getting competent quarterback play, like you said. So he could see like 8 to 10 targets every week potentially. Not saying he will every single week, but that is always in play for him if they are in catch-up mode, just like it was last week. So he's not Deontay Johnson, but he's the second best option there in Carolina right now.
Yeah, Michael, last one for me, and it's about streaming defenses. And I'm going to bring up a defense that, like this time last year, we never thought of because, well, hell, they gave up 70 points in a game. But I'm watching the Denver defense last week, and I'm thinking, who are these guys? I know Patrick Surtain, and come to find out he's only the only first-rounder on that team. And, wow, they look great against the Jets. So is this a good defense, or is the Jets are just so down? What are your thoughts about Denver, perhaps, as a streaming option at home against the Raiders? Are there any other teams you're looking at coming up this week as far as picking up a defense?
Yeah, I think it's a great call on the Broncos. They gave up the 70 points a year ago to the Dolphins, but down their stretch, they were a really sound defense. They kind of, I don't know what happened after that 70-point game, but they kind of got their heads together or whatever and turned things around. And then this year, not only have they been playing great, but they are shutting down elite wide receivers every single week. So, yeah, I very much so think they are in play. I'll also take a shot at the Jets. I think everyone got way too high on the Jets after a game against the Patriots. Every other game this year, they've looked mediocre at best. So I know people are catching the Broncos' attention now, but I think it's more about the Jets than the Broncos. But if you missed out on them, the Dolphins' defense is in play because the Patriots are pretty awful. The Panthers against the Bears because they still do take sacks at a very high rate. The Colts against the Jaguars. And then on the other side of two that I mentioned, I think the Raiders are in play against Denver, who had negative passing yards in the first half of last week against the Jets. And then the Patriots are in play against Miami because they cannot seemingly move the ball right now.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch that offense, Miami, just, indulge us, you're a Bills fan as well, doesn't it make you feel like even if the Bills have a stinker like they did on Sunday night, they're going to be just fine because of how incompetent the rest of the AFC East looks at times?
Yeah, it was – look, if there's ever a week to lose a game, you don't want to get blown out on Sunday Night Football, but every other team in your division lost. Plus, I don't know, maybe I sound crazy saying this. The Bills hadn't lost a game like this in 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. Like, it's a one-time thing. It's going to happen. It's early in the season. I would rather that than another heartbreaking loss that we've suffered tens of them in the last 5 years. So, I'm not panicking on the Bills, but on the Dolphins side, yeah, I'm a big Mike McDaniels fan. I expected better, but I will defend him in the sense of, like, I know people are like, oh, some offensive genius. Yeah, look at what other teams do also when they lose their starting quarterback. If, knock on wood, I hope it never happens. If Josh Allen ever goes down, the season's over for the Bills. That's the case for a lot of teams. The starting quarterback is the most important player and the highest paid player on the team for a reason. So my hope is that as Huntley gets more familiar with the team, because let's not forget, he was signed off the practice squad just last week. So I'm hoping if he gets more reps and stuff, maybe we could start to see the Dolphins look a little bit more like the Dolphins for fantasy purposes. But right now, it is all Tyreek, Waddle, HN, all averaging less than 8 fantasy points per game without Tua.
Michael F. Florio, NFL Network. Tell our listeners what kind of content they can check out here as we're all going to go to the waiver wire tonight and optimize our lineups before we get to the Week 5 action here.
Yeah, I got Start and Sit 'em, a real spicy one. There's a lot of big names that I think you could get away from this week on NFL.com tomorrow, Fantasy Live over on the NFL Network, and then rotoballer.com and Florio's Football Show. I have a podcast with them over there as well.
Dude, appreciate the time as always. Let's do it again next Tuesday. We'll hit the waiver wire once again.
Sounds good, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
Yeah,
there he is, Michael F. Florio, NFL Network, Bills Mafia, stopping by the sports bar to share his thoughts on fantasy football.
I love the fact we get somebody from the NFL Network coming on every week with us.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And great. I mean, look, yeah, I know fantasy football isn't for everybody. Most sports fans, I think, are into it, or they get it. Football fans, I should say. Some people play fantasy baseball. Fantasy sports are fun. It's a pastime.
It's a minority now. You and I both know somebody. I would never play fantasy football. Blah. You like football. You're in like one league, right? Or you're doing something. Or maybe you like action. I think the majority of us play fantasy football.
I still love playing fantasy football. I will say that there have been that I'm the meme of the guy walking down the street with his girlfriend and the pretty red dresses on this, and I'm looking over my shoulder. That's me with legalized sports wagers. Ever since betting became a thing, I do notice that my interests have shifted a little bit more towards where I've got a little bit more action invested than the season-long league that I drafted in August, which I still enjoy, and I still love the rush of setting the lineup and watching. And last night, although it was a losing effort for your hero, it was exhilarating. It was fun to come back, only to see Jared Goff take a knee and snatch my victory.
This is more of a real kind of thing, actually a betting thing, but we got some line movement here, Mike Danger.
Oh.
Bills are now favored by 1 according to BetQL. So the line went from Texans +1, -1 now to the Bills -1. So the Bills are now favored in Houston.
Okay.
So that is...
I mean, that feels like a reaction to what we were saying at the conclusion of Sunday night's game. Like, oh, the real loser in this game isn't the Bills. It's the Houston Texans, because you know that the Bills aren't going to put up 2 bad games in a row, 2 stinkers in a row. They're going to regroup, and if they get healthier, especially with Bernard returning, if that happens, yeah, I think you have to like their odds. That's favorable news for the Buffalo Bills heading into Houston for the matchup against Stephon Diggs and the Texans. Happy hour next on The Fan. We've got Major League Baseball action happening in progress.
Ooh, Tigers, the team that snuck in, Danger.
Yeah.
Now they're what? How many outs away from taking Game 1 in Houston?
Yeah, we'll keep you updated on the action on the diamond, and we'll also share what we learned from Matt Perino, the Syracuse Post-Standard. Talk some Bills here as they prepare for that matchup in Houston. A game you'll be able to hear on the Fan Rochester with our coverage starting at 9 a.m. early Sunday morning kickoff at 1 o'clock. From NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas. Your calls are always welcome as well at 866-4326-585-866 4FAN.
Into thrilling play-by-plays. WROC AM, WBEE HD2, and W239BF Rochester. The sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
We've got breaking news here in the sports bar. Von Miller, Bills pass rusher, he's been suspended 4 games by the league. This for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. Miller will be eligible to return to the Bills on October 27th in a game at Seattle. As first reported by Tom Pelissero, just became official. The Bills tweeting out they've signed defensive tackle Zion Logue. This off the Falcons practice squad. Meanwhile, some drama in Las Vegas today. Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams has requested a trade. This according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. To the Major League Baseball playoffs, where things looking good here for the Detroit Tigers as they're playing Game 1 in Houston. They're in the bottom of the 8th. Tigers 3, Astros nothing. No score between the Royals and the Orioles. They're in the 5th. Mets and Brewers to begin at 5:30. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
We begin to turn the page to the Houston Texans.
I think that they're probably very closely matched teams, and the Bills are going to be motivated to bounce back and bounce back in a big way. But this is an important game against an AFC opponent that this might be another team you've got to get through in January if you ultimately want to get to the, to the Super Bowl.
But yep, everybody's going to be talking about Diggs this week, but it's about just winning the game.
Mike Danger.
You could argue that the biggest loser in the Bills-Ravens outcome is actually the Houston Texans. Do you really think the Bills are going to do that 2 games in a row?
Gene Battaglia.
This would be a real fun one to get. I think you want this one more than you want the Ravens one, right? You're facing the guy who left you, who caused a bunch of issues on the way out. I do like the way things set up, so you should feel fairly confident this team is going to bounce back this week.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
All right, we've got breaking news to get to in the sports bar.
Ow! 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 It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
We will get to what's happening on the diamond as well with Major League Baseball's postseason getting underway. 4 games today and tonight that we'll get to as well. But first, Von Miller suspended 4 games. Gino just mentioned it in his update. This stemming back to the November domestic.
I've got it here. Now we're revisiting what happened here, and it's funny how we move on to the next thing, but this was an alleged terrible incident. This was back on November 30th. He turned himself into Dallas area authorities, where an arrest warrant was issued by the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. Miller, according to police at that point on November 29th, got into a verbal argument with a pregnant woman. According to the police report, that escalated into an assault. Miller was charged with assault of a pregnant person. The charges were later dismissed here.
Yeah, there was never anything filed.
Right,
no
correct.
Charges filed.
No charged. He was released, with a $5,000 bond. But funny how the timing of this.
The timing of it just feels kind of weird to me. It feels kind of icky. All right, well, I felt we had resolution on this, dating back to last year, and no charges were filed. So why today? What's the significance of today that leads the NFL to say, you violated this policy, you're sitting out for 4 games? Why today?
Why today? I would think that aside from the police report that you do have as part of the police report, and you can go find it, that cell phone footage. There's some video footage. And it's one thing for me to kind of, verbally say, I'm just talking general, but here is what actually domestic violence looks like. And the charges were never brought about, and we'd have to bring on a legal expert, somebody of those. But just from this standpoint, the NFL knew they had to do something.
Right.
So why didn't they take action back in February or March?
Right.
For crying out loud. Very convenient to do this on a Tuesday. So you know who you can prepare for, who you're going to be bringing in to the lineup down in Houston.
That's right. That's the part that is kind of fishy to me. That's the part that makes me challenge that the NFL is really just they're making up the rules as they go, and that's nothing new. We've had this discussion before. They kind of do what they want as they want. If it's something that they want to see disappear quickly, it will disappear quickly. If it's something they want to drag on, they will drag it on. In this instance, it's just the timing of it just feels kind of odd to me. It feels odd that today is the day that they drop a 4-game hammer on Von Miller.
Okay, so now maybe you're thinking, aha, the cloud's lifted, because when we heard about this originally, right, this is before when we realized, my gosh, the Bills are really in a pickle here when it comes to their salary cap. Well, it would really help if the NFL came down with something here. And what Von Miller did, and boy, didn't he look like the team guy. You know what? I'm going to take a lower base salary. I'm going to go back and get it all in incentives. Yeah, good job, Von. All right. And hey, you got 3 sacks in 3 games. Well, by taking that approach, and again, this is salary cap gymnastics, if the Bills didn't do anything, well, a 4-game suspension would have resulted in $3.8 million in savings for the Bills against the salary cap. Instead, because much of this was converted to incentives, the Bills, with the lower base, according to Spot Track, will only save $333,000. That's it.
Of his $1.5 million salary, base salary for this season.
Which, that gets you, what, a couple practice squad guys? I mean, it's a nothing, right, that you're going to be saving on that. It's also, the Bills knew this was coming. Like the corresponding move this morning, oh, wow, the Bills signed a defensive tackle off the Falcons practice squad. Boy, they must not be happy with what they saw down in Baltimore. Brandon Beane likes to turn the bottom of the roster. Or, hey, we got this coming up later today. Oh, also, by the way, Danger, not only is it a Tuesday, it's freaking at the end of the day. It's at the end of the day. You're not putting this out. And now at the end of the day, your lead story tonight on ESPN, hey, how about those baseball playoffs? And how about everything else and everything? And by the time we get to tomorrow morning, it's kind of old news. Yeah, boy, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, they really do. That's stupid me. I'm answering my own question. Like, why today? Why would they do this today? Von Miller, a future Hall of Famer. Why would they suspend? Oh, because we're distracted today. There's really nothing going on in the NFL save for Devontae Adams asking for a trade, which is arguably still a bigger story than Von Miller being suspended.
I would agree with that, because Von Miller not being here 4 games, does that mean, ooh, now I feel worse about the Bills' chances in Houston or against the Jets? No.
But it also happens on a day where you've got 4 very compelling wild card matchups in Major League Baseball's postseason. So the typical sports fan isn't really even paying attention to the headlines from the NFL today.
I mean, are they doing the right thing, or are they just looking at it as we need to help out the team in preparation? Because if what I'm saying is, well, Gene, if this was really a news dump, wouldn't they do it on Friday at 4? Yes. But the Bills need to know who they're going to bring to Houston. They need to know who's going to practice this week. They had to take Von Miller off the roster here for the next 4 games.
So the other questions you could ask about this this move, the NFL suspending Von Miller for 4 games, there is no impact on his future salary. There's no dead cap.
No.
And anything that would void would be just the remainder of his base salary in 2024, which right now is just over $833,000. He would also lose $60,000 in per game active bonuses, 4 games, $15,000 per game. And we talked about how many incentives he had baked into his restructured deal for sacks. Obviously, you're not getting as many of those sack incentives if you're sitting out for 4 games.
And
I'll throw this out there too.
Yeah.
If you're the Buffalo Bills, I mean, you're holding on to him. I imagine they're holding on to him, but why? Why? At this point, why? I mean, for all the talk of culture and character, and look, the timing of this is so fishy to me. We talked to Von Miller during training camp, knowing Von Miller did some really, really bad things last year. Really bad things in November of 2023. And you want to, where would any of us be without a second chance? But this wasn't a second chance for Von Miller. This is like a pattern of behavior with Von Miller that stemmed back to his time even when he was with Denver. So, why? I imagine they're going to keep him. I'm saying it. I'm not saying that the second a player steps out of the line, you cut that player. That's not really the way it goes in the NFL. But is there an opportunity there for?
The answer's no.
Yeah,
it's
a no.
no. Like it's a $40 million cap hit. Dead cap $40 million. Repeat after me. Dead cap $40 million.
You've already got all that. How much dead cap do you already have this year?
No, okay. Honestly,
doesn't matter at this point. You're already.
Oh yeah, that's Alex Brasky. Good tweet here because it's Vaughn himself. Day 2 of training camp, and we all bought in, right? Vaughn, quote, "No charges were ever filed, and the case is closed. I'm just able to move forward and solely focus on football." It was, by the way, third-degree felony assault on a pregnant woman. That was the official.
Well, that was it wasn't, the charges weren't ever filed.
Right.
But that's what he went to the Dallas. Look, it was an ugly scene. It's an ugly story. And honestly, we love the player on the field, but off the field is kind of an ugly player. Like, this is not an isolated incident. It wasn't an isolated incident. And you let it play out, and there were no charges filed. And you could say, well, there's no charges filed. Everything's fine. No, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means no charges were filed. Okay. Well, the Bills get a little clarity as far as what their defensive line looks like here for the next 4 weeks, and they make the move today to sign the kid off the Falcons practice squad in anticipation of this move from the NFL to suspend Von Miller for 4 games, violation of the league's personal conduct policy.
Yeah, so they bring in a defensive tackle, and you can say, well, that's good because the Bills needed some help there, but gosh. Yeah, I was talking to my dad last night, too. Like, oh, Dwan Smoot, what a good player, what a good player. It's not too often that you say, my gosh, that was a Bills player with like a dirty play in that Baltimore game. We didn't even talk about that. So for Smoot, is he going to be a guy? You're looking at Casey Tuhill and Javon Solomon right now as guys that need to step up in that rotation.
God, I'm just now thinking about this more too, Gene. I mean, you mentioned it, how much, what Von Miller is forfeiting here of his salary. The Bills had to know that this was coming, and with that restructure, probably did Vaughn a solid by saying, you're going to forfeit a lot of money if you're playing under your current salary. Restructure, and you're not going to forfeit as much if you're going to take a suspension for personal conduct. I mean, the wranglings behind the scenes of this is just so unsavory and gross, and the timing of all of it is just, ugh.
Can we agree on this? Like, if the Bills move on, according to Spot Track, their dead cap on Von Miller after this offseason, $15 million. That's it. Like,
after this season?
Yeah.
I fully believe this is his last season in Buffalo. I don't think there's anything left in the tank after this season. I mean, what we've seen so far this year has been encouraging, right? We love the story, and we like tallying up Von's incentives there and saying, oh, hey, congratulations, Von Miller, with a 4th sack. You'll get an additional $2.5 million.
I go back to the Jacksonville game and, like, what you're up by 4 scores in the second half. Like, if this is somebody that you really – remember we talked to Peter King before any of this happened? You need to keep him on a pitch count. This is before he got hurt. Like, when he came in, we were all in love with Von. Like, and so now 2 years later, we don't need him on a pitch count? Honestly, like, I'm not a fan of NBA load management, but for a player that is on his last legs, you want him fresh for the postseason. Why was he in there? Oh, well, that's right. We need to have him get his incentives there.
So there you have it. Von Miller will be absent from the Buffalo Bills for the next 4 weeks, eligible to return week 8. That's the Seattle game.
The Sean McDermott news from yesterday. Now, he did not speak. We'll hear from everybody tomorrow, I'm sure. We'll hear some McDermott McLies. Actually, that's going to be kind of weird. That's the first time I don't know to what degree McDermott will lie about Steph Diggs. He's going to be asked about facing Diggs.
I think anything he says about Steph Diggs, anything positive he says about Steph Diggs is an absolute lie, because in his core, he hates that guy.
Yeah.
Hates that player, hates his character, hates what he put him through last year, resents the hell out of that guy.
It sounds like Bernard has a shot to play as TB, as he is he is called here in the soundbite, working his way back.
TB is improving. Both are improving. TB probably more so at this point. We'll see how the week flows for both of them. I do expect TB to be practicing at some point during the week. Taryn, a little bit more of a question mark at this point. We'll see how it goes.
It's too bad that Von Miller won't be able to go out there against the Texans. Dan Orlovsky stopped by One Bills Live earlier today, mentioned how this offensive line of the Texans has been struggling through 4 games.
Yeah, they can't pass protect. Their drop back pass protection is poor. It has been all year. Their record is really about CJ. CJ's been remarkable and making plays with his feet and really on third down, which was the case last year.
Yeah, I think the Bills' defense overall in Baltimore, can we just say they had a terrible night and just kind of hit the reset? Because through 3 games, I think Greg Rousseau was playing some of his best football, and some of the things you saw at Oliver, you liked right away. But I go back to what we started with. You get Bernard back in this game, like I don't think Balin Spector's been bad. Bernard is a different player. That's going to be big. Johnson's the key. Taron Johnson, you don't realize until somebody's out of a lineup. And sure, the Bills got away with it. Cam Lewis had a really nice game against Arizona, and then he had a nice game against Miami, and then that was a terrible game against Baltimore.
Really bad.
Yeah, so like Taron Johnson, I think that's the one you're keeping your fingers crossed for this week.
If you're the Bills offense, if you're Joe Brady, if you're Josh Allen, are you looking for ways to attack Houston's defense? And Houston's defense, the strength of that team, I still believe, with D'Amico Ryans offensively, great wide receivers, good quarterback. Defensively, D'Amico Ryans has those guys playing at a high level. Dan Orlovsky also mentioning how the Bills can attack Houston's defense on Sunday.
They are an ultra-aggressive linebacker unit. I mean, they are downhill. You have to use that against them. So, some of the play actions that maybe aren't really long and developing play actions, but ones that are quicker hitting, that's one thing you got to do. You got to move the pocket on them.
That's Dan Orlovsky earlier today on One Bills Live.
The Bills have put out a statement. Actually, it's from the National Football League, and it's absolutely nothing. Just stating facts.
The word salad.
Word salad.
What
yep,
happened
the Bills. Here? Yep, the Bills have. The league has suspended Von Miller for 4 games. Yep.
Yeah, I think that makes restructuring. If you're the Bills, that makes talking Von Miller into a restructure a hell of a lot more savory when you know that this is coming. And you can say that instead of forfeiting $3.81 million of salary, you only need to forfeit just over $333,000.
They knew it was coming. Why didn't that the first 4 games?
That's what's
or why not?
That's what's tricky to me.
Yeah,
Other than what we just kind of like to do is that, let's release this news about a future Hall of Famer on a day where sports fans may be distracted with other things.
Now,
late in the day.
Yeah, if you think this is... Let me bring in somebody who actually played in this league, and you hear him on the broadcast with Brownie, Eric Wood on X right now, without knowing all the ins and outs of the situation. Okay. Yeah, we can agree we don't know everything, right? And I know it does take time to do proper due diligence, but it's always amazing to me how long these suspensions take to enforce. Absolutely.
That's the thing that's fishy to me.
Yeah.
You knew about this in November of 2023 when it happened. It cleaned itself up pretty quickly. There wasn't like an investigation. Police weren't investigating. There were no charges filed. So why wait until even the end of last season? You could have acted on this. You could have affected the Bills in the postseason if you wanted to suspend Von Miller last season. Why today? I think it is because there's a lot of action today. There's a lot going on today. And again, when you turn on your Sports Center tonight and they get to the NFL after they get through all the Major League Baseball stuff, Davante Adams will be the top story. Do it today, bury it. Do it today, end of the day, bury it.
Yeah,
nobody will even know.
And by the time you come back on Wednesday, hey, let's preview all week. Here's your favorite head coach, and here's your favorite player talking about this week's opponent.
Yeah.
They manage the news cycle.
It is something, man. It is something how not only they manage the news cycle, but they worked in cahoots to make sure Von Miller's dent in his paycheck wasn't going to be as significant as it would have been. Look, he took a dent in his paycheck by restructuring. They're finding ways to get him that money back through his incentives and playing him when they don't necessarily need to be playing him, going out there chasing sacks. But the news today and the 4-game suspension and the forfeiture of a much smaller number for Von Miller than what it would have been if he played on his previous contract. It's all kind of gross.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Davante Adams, and somebody might be listening right now like, wait, what are you talking about, Davante Adams? Okay, here's the story with Davante Adams. And it seems silly, Danger, that it would be social media that would spark something like this. But trust me, folks, I tell you, this story has a little kind of a different angle where there's some random site that's AI generated and that just posts something silly that says, has Davante Adams played his last game as a Raider? Okay, well, he's got a hamstring injury, or at least that's what they're going with, and the team won. All right. That post on Instagram was liked by the head coach, Antonio Pierce, full stop. What the heck is a head coach doing on Instagram, much less liking posts against one of his top players? If you figure the Raiders are going to be this team that's going to turn it around and make the postseason, wouldn't you need Davante Adams? And if Davante Adams, if you think you're jaking it or whatever they want to say, using an old Rome phrase, then you know what? Sit him down, look him in the face, and say, get out there. But doing it that way gives the player license to be unhappy because that passive-aggressive BS that when you communicate like that through social media, and don't let any of your kids do that, by the way. That's just my 2 cents. Like, it gives Adams the license to be upset. So what does he go on? He goes on the Kay Adams show this morning and expresses his displeasure, and then come and find out 6 hours later he has requested a trade. And now we have odds, my Danger, where Davante Adams will be traded to. The Raiders have not commented on this yet.
Well, there are plenty of teams that could use the services of one Davante Adams, and I think that the next few weeks are going to be very interesting to find out exactly. It feels very obvious that the head coach doesn't want the player around. The player is wore out his welcome. He's not really into it anymore. And at 32 years old, I think Davante Adams can still offer a team something in terms of, with what they might need at wide receiver. And again, there's no shortage of relevant teams in need of a wide receiver.
I just want to give the Houston Astros, commend them. They are battling back here. It's 3-1, bottom of the ninth. There's nobody out, and they have now the tying run on first base. And I'm not sure who the player was, Danger. You can't do a full shift, but whatever scouting report it was, the second baseman is practically playing behind second base itself, left the whole right side of the infield open. RBI single, that player just putting it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you did something smart there. So the Tigers have their closer Foley on right now, trying to close the door against.
And there was no way that the Tigers thought that this was going to be easy. I mean, you had a 3-0 lead, but you got to remember this is. I mean, how many consecutive years has it been in the ALCS for Houston? I mean, 7, something like that. They're going for their 7th consecutive ALCS.
They've been a machine.
They're absolutely a machine. And so now with one out, runners on second and third, they look to tie this game and potentially win it here in the bottom of the ninth. We'll keep you posted on that. And we've also got the Orioles and Royals happening right now. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that game is a pitcher's duel, that there's not a lot of action happening.
No, I mean, like Corbin Burns is just a beast. It's the Royals actually up now 1-0 in the 6th. Oh, and then coming up at 5:30, Danger. You in, buddy? You gonna be watching the Mets?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course I'm in. I'm paying attention for you, buddy. You know that.
Thanks to Tony, by the way, calling up because we keep an eye on X and everything else. And Tony is like, hey, sports bar. Yeah, it's Tony from Rochester. I want you to comment on the Von Miller suspension. What? Oh, took my eye off X for 1 second. Okay, thanks.
Well, I think that's kind of what the NFL wanted, right?
Yeah.
The NFL doesn't want us talking about it. They want it to kind of be disappear into the ether. This didn't really happen. We'll flash the Men in Black flashlight in front of your eyes, and you'll forget that Von Miller even did this horrible thing last November. 4-game suspension for Von Miller.
Well, he gets to go have a vacation in Texas for a month.
We will come back with a round of shots next in the sports bar.
Yeah, we'll give a little hat tip to Michael Mersch. Talking to reporters one last time today, calling it a career will set you up for baseball tonight. Boy, we've had a terrible string here. Losing Dikembe Mutombo, now Pete Rose. There's another baseball great that right now is in the hospital. We're just hoping for the best here. We'll tell you who that is, a player from the 1980s we all hold in high regard. And why, Mike Danger, I'm actually worried about you this weekend.
Me?
Yeah.
You're worried about me?
Yeah.
Grown man.
Grown man going to Chicago.
Worried about me. Well, I
just your mental state.
Appreciate that.
Your mental state, because you're playing the worst team in the league. You're playing Andy Dalton, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. He's a backup.
I'll explain.
What could go wrong?
No matter what you're worried about, I'll explain why. Even if the worst case scenario happens, my mental state can't be. I mean, I've had a great 24 hours mentally. Good 24 hours mentally. We'll get into that and more next year on the Fan Rochester.
Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Breaking news in the sports bar as Von Miller has been suspended by the NFL for 4 games. This for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Miller would be eligible to return on October 27th against Seattle. The Bills today signing a defensive tackle, Zion Logue, off of the Falcons practice squad. Meanwhile, Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams has asked for a trade. This according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. Major League Baseball playoffs, it's down to the last strike for the Houston Astros. They've got the tying run on second. Detroit leading 3-1 as they are in the bottom of the ninth. Bobby Witt Jr. with an RBI single, low-scoring affair in Baltimore. In the middle of 6, Royals leading there 1-0. And we've got the Mets and Brewers coming up at 5:30. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
Rochester's home for live sports and the best sports talk anywhere. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
Happy hour continues in the sports bar. Glad you're with us this afternoon. Thanks for checking us out on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester, our stream on Twitch if you want to watch the sports bar as well at The Fan Rochester. We sound our best in the Odyssey app or on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. And you know, you were talking about Davante Adams and the Raiders. Good timing, by the way, before we get to shots here, Gino. We're going to see our friend, the Minister of Mayhem, on Friday. I wonder what the minister has to say about the dysfunction in Vegas with the head coach liking a post and basically forcing a star player to his way out of Vegas with the Raiders. We'll be at Three Heads on Friday for Friday Football Talk Live. It sets you up for Week 5 against the Houston Texans.
I can already tell what Jeff will be like. You know, if he doesn't want to be here, that's good. We'll get something good for him, and then he'll be on our way. And we're the defensive team anyway.
He'll attack it with common sense,
Yes,
you mean?
yeah.
Leaping IPA. Man, this is the new favorite for the football season. The Leaping IPA at Three Heads has the greatest beer label of all time, and our friends from Reservoir Dogs are going to be serving up the Mr. Blue, available as a beef, hot dog, or burger topped with applewood smoked bacon, blue cheese, honey bourbon barbecue sauce, and crispy onion petals. Sounds delicious. Can't wait for Friday. We'll be live from 3 until 6, and we invite you out to Three Heads Brewing on Atlantic Avenue in the neighborhood of the arts for Friday Football Talk Live.
Here's a quick take here, Danger. In terms of teams, or I should say sports where it compare the regular season to the postseason. Regular season's at one level. The postseason seems like a different viewing experience. It's a different level the players are at. I think number 1 on the list is the Stanley Cup playoffs, like hockey during the season. But then you get the hockey and players like, whoa, what is this sport? This is awesome.
Different, yeah.
Number 2 on the list, what about baseball?
I don't disagree with that. I don't put it ahead of the NFL postseason because I still think, for me, if I'm ranking postseasons, it goes NHL, NFL, MLB, NBA. And I know NBA can get wild, and the Knicks were a lot of fun last NBA postseason, but I still think baseball does elevate. It does feel like a different viewing experience when you get to the postseason.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're watching every pitch. So just to kind of update everybody, again, the Astros down their last strike. Now they have the bases loaded, a 2-2 count. Detroit is up on Houston 3-1, again, bottom of the ninth.
And that's it. Game over.
Yep.
Lined out the first. Hayward lining out the first. So Detroit holds on, even though they had to sweat it out there in the ninth. It was some crazy stat that they just flashed on the screen. Like, teams that are down 3+ runs in the bottom of the ninth are like 1 in 538 since 1990. What could have happened there with Houston would have been exceptionally rare, which is a comeback from 3 or more runs in the ninth inning.
Now I'm just gonna this is of no use to anybody else other than me. Danger. If you can turn over now to ESPN off of ABC to get to the Mets game. As I will tell everybody that after this at 8:30 on ESPN tonight, it's the Braves and Padres. The Braves, I think it's fair to say they've got the toughest road here in a year full of injuries for this team. They have another one. Their ace, Chris Sale, he's 18-3 on the season. Well, not available this series. He's been scratched with those back spasms. There is no receding, if you didn't know, for the playoffs. So let's say you're the Braves. If you got by San Diego, well, then the Braves were to go face the Dodgers. And then if that happens and the brackets hold, then you would be facing the Phillies to reach the World Series. That's a really tough road.
Yeah, I don't know. Where do you come down on that as far as the not reseeding? Is that?
I don't like it at all. I think that you're the Guardians. You're like, yes, awesome, Houston, bye-bye. You would welcome that. Even though the Tigers are hot, there was this fun story. You're the Guardians. You faced them a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Houston is the scary team that has won in all these situations. If you're the Yankees, wouldn't you rather have the Tigers than Royals or Baltimore? I know the Royals are kind of, and but the
both Orioles and Baltimore have the Orioles and Royals have both kind of struggled here since July. I mean, I don't know that either team is lighting it up the way they did early in the season, but I do remember earlier in the season, and this is why, isn't it? It's a long season, 162 games. I mean, remember how bad Houston was to start the season? Like we were pouring dirt on the Astros to start the season.
Yeah, they were June. They're 10 games behind Seattle, and part of that was also Seattle, but
sure.
Houston found a way, and they've got some different players.
Well,
here.
October is here, and that's all that matters. It's a great month, and what a great way to start on October 1st with Major League Baseball's postseason getting underway. And now 1 game in the books, 3 games left to conclude.
Who doesn't love former Rochester Red Wing Fernando Valenzuela? Because that's what he's best known for, right?
Oh, he's one of us?
Yeah, he pitched for the Red Wings at the end of his career.
Rochesterian Fernando Valenzuela.
Yeah, I mean, some may say it's like Fernando Mania 81 with the Dodgers. I say no, it was his time in Rochester. He is not going to be on the Dodgers Spanish-speaking broadcast this playoff season. He's a broadcaster for the team now. He's been admitted to a hospital. The family wants to keep his, quote, his disease a secret. That's according to reporter David Fedelson. Gosh, in a week where we've lost too many already here.
I mean, look, I appreciate that they want to keep things a secret, and I respect that privacy. But at the same time, I didn't know Pete Rose was sick. I didn't know that Dikembe Mutombo was sick. I didn't know that, we don't hear about that.
It's a fine line, right? Because if somebody says, hey, I've got cancer, like, me by saying it that way, it's like, oh, okay, I'm real sorry for you. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just so jaded, Danger. Like that's where it is. I can respect somebody that wants to keep it private, actually.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hope that he gets better soon, gets well soon. It's been a rough week. The rule of 3. I don't want to hear about who's.
No.
Did we already reach the rule of 3? No, we didn't. Right? We got Mutombo.
Well, there was an actor, Andy Amos, passed away.
Oh,
today.
yeah.
He was
They got the golden arches.
Yes!
We got the golden arcs.
That's it.
They're McDonald's. We're McDowell's. Yeah, who can forget about him? Good times. He was great.
I actually have been to that McDowell's, but it's actually a McDonald's on Queens Boulevard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, useless fact. Arizona was the odd team out of the playoff scenario, right? That's when the Braves and Mets. By the way, I hated the fact that, hey, the Braves were spraying champagne, the Mets were spraying champagne, and there were the two teams out together.
You want a rivalry.
I do.
What are we doing? Right? Like, yeah, you want these teams to hate each other.
Do you think like Dan Fates and I would be like, yeah, congratulations, look at us, No, I don't think that would be the case, me and any Braves fan. Arizona was the odd team out of the playoffs. Their owner, Ken Kendrick, blames himself. Why? For signing Jordan Montgomery, quote, a horrible decision to invest that money in a guy who performed as poorly as he did.
Wow.
It's our biggest mistake this season from a talent standpoint, and I'm the perpetrator of that.
Wow.
Montgomery went 9-8 with a 6.23 ERA. He ended up in the bullpen at the end of the season. He made $25 million. Surely pending free agents are going to be fired up now to kind of sign with Arizona.
Yeah, you better perform or we're going to call you out publicly for your lack of performance.
A horrible decision. Right. Sometimes it's obvious.
Now, I should know this, but is Montgomery there long term?
No.
It was just a one-year deal?
It was 1 year deal. It was one of those Scott Boras. Remember Boras? It was him and Blake Snell.
This was like a late deal, right?
Right. He got himself into a pickle saying, all right, my clients, and instead of getting the big 5-6 year deal, teams have wised up. We're not investing long-term in pitchers that are past the age of 30. Why would you do that? They're going to break down. Okay, well, don't do that. Invest short-term. Just pay what you would Well, that didn't work out either.
Yeah,
for Arizona.
That's funny.
Remember the story of the Jaguar employee who embezzled over $22 million for his team to cover his gambling losses?
That was, I do remember, that was the story of George Costanza.
Was that wrong? Should I not have done that? I tell you, I gotta plead ignorance on this thing, because if anyone had said anything to me at all when I first started here that sort of thing was frowned upon.
He wasn't supposed to do that? He wasn't supposed to embezzle over $22 million from the Jags?
It actually wasn't the Seinfeld character. It was actually Amit Patel is his name. He's currently serving a sentence of 6.5 years.
Oh.
All right, so the story's over, right? Not over. Patel from behind bars is actually suing FanDuel for $250 million.
Yes, I'm going to sue FanDuel for $250 million because I want my punitive damages. All I did was embezzle $22 million, and they said rude things about me, and I hear their commercials all the time. And I'm going to sue Mike Danger, and I'm going to sue New York State Helpline at 866-4326. I'm going to sue everybody because this is the punitive damages. It's their fault that I'm an addict.
I'm glad you're not suing me there. So.
No, I'm going to sue you, even though you're punitive damages. You're guilty by association. That horrible Mike Danger always talking about FanDuel, and they're just giving me these messages, and don't they know? I'm addicted. I can't help myself. I embezzled $22 million, and I spent them on shoes and glasses and guava juice.
First heard about this on Friday. Michael Mersch stepping aside.
Suing Michael Mersch.
No, you're not suing Michael Mersch. You like Michael Mersch.
Seth Appert suing everybody.
Michael Mersch, originally a fourth-round pick of the Kings in 2011, but he realized, you know what, I can make a good career in playing minor league hockey. He was such an asset. 4 years he spent in Rochester as the team captain, calling it a career, speaking to reporters one last time.
I'll miss the guys in the locker room and whatever it is, it just seems like you have a lot of things in common and you can always relate because you have hockey. So no matter what it is. So I feel like that'll probably be the biggest adjustment is not being around guys that I feel like are very similar to myself consistently.
I wonder if that guy's got a future behind a bench somewhere. It feels like he's got that kind of leadership quality. I mean, for all the times, all the weeks that we talked to Seth Appert, that was the one guy you never heard a negative thing about, like just the example. That's the example that has been set that everybody needs to live up to.
Yeah, I wonder too, like you hear this. It happens a lot in football. Like you're just staring down the schedule. It's like, oh, am I up for this? Am I feeling up to this? And it doesn't come as a surprise that sometimes these happen right before the season starts. That's when the reality sets in. And great for Michael Mersch. I do think the Amerks are going to have a good team this year, Danger. Like,
did you see who they sent down today?
Yeah.
And you see who didn't get sent down today? I mean,
I saw Roseanne got sent down.
Roseanne got sent down. Cooley did not. I guess that was the one thing that surprised me. Like, those guys always have felt like a package deal to me, but Cooley staying there, up with Buffalo at least a little bit longer. We'll see how it all shakes out here with, I can't believe this, the season starting for the Sabres on Friday.
Jeez. So they're the warm-up act for the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia.
You got, for Friday Football Talk Live, the aforementioned Three Heads appearance on Atlantic Avenue in the neighborhood of the Arts.
So a trivia question here, Mike Danger. Including the postseason, which team currently has the longest home winning streak in the NFL? Now, this used to be the Dallas Cowboys. He's clearing his throat.
Dun, 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 the Bears. Dun, 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 the Bears. Dun, 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 the Bears.
It was one of those, I read it, and like, that can't be right. It can't be right.
Yeah.
7 games, that's it? 7-game winning streak for Chicago dates back the last time they lost at home, October 15, 2023, against the Vikings. They would beat the Raiders the following week, which led to Josh McDaniels eventually getting fired. Surely this streak is going to continue when the Bears host the Panthers with Mike Danger in attendance this Sunday.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. It's been all I've been thinking about. And even last night, I'm watching Monday Night Football, and I've got my 20-year-old who's coming with me, my daughter who's going to her first game at Soldier Field ever, coming with me this weekend. And she's getting more invested in the NFL. She's getting more invested in the games and the players, and she's, quiz me, Dad, quiz me, ask me who the quarterback is for this team, which is all the stuff that you do. If you have a son, you're doing that with your son as early as they can talk, right? Like 6 years old, I remember being able to rattle off head coaches for NFL teams, right? Like that was, And with my daughter, she liked that the Bears were a thing, and she wore her Urlacher jersey, but she never really got into football, and now she's getting into it, which I love. And I doubled down, and I said, you know what? When the games were over, I'm like, let's initiate you. Let's watch the 30 for 30 on the 85 Bears. And we did. We watched it last night. It was a late night, but we watched it last night. The head injuries and the CTE stuff made her a little uncomfortable. She's like, nope, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth it. If you're an NFL, the sympathetic, mind of a 20-year-old, just doesn't understand or comprehend why somebody would do this to themselves. And a lot of people would wonder why they do this to themselves for the purpose of entertaining us and making millions of dollars in the process. But, as we were watching it, I was getting a little emotional. I'm not going to lie. I'm excited for this weekend. It's going to be a fun weekend. Win or lose, it's going to be a fun weekend.
The sloppy, burping, farting fans in Milwaukee are happy Brewers leading the Mets 1-0.
That's Gene Battaglia, everybody. No misfit to be found here.
No,
he just called
like,
fan base sloppy, fat, and burpy.
Eat your cheese and drink your cheap beer.
Bart Winkler's a Brewers guy. You going to call Bart Winkler sloppy and well, he is kind of sloppy.
Yeah, it's like I don't think Bart would be like, yep, that's us.
I gotta love him. Lovable fan base there in Milwaukee. The Brewers got the 1-0 lead there, bottom of the first.
Look, I'm not surprised, and I'm not going to be surprised when the Padres do a number in the Braves tonight.
Well, it's an unfair advantage. The extra rest, the Mets having to wrap up that doubleheader, get right on a plane, go to Milwaukee.
Like the hurricane kind of ruined it for everybody. Royals leading the Orioles, they go to the 8th, 1-0 Kansas City.
Okay, and for what it's worth, if you want to fade me on these picks, and I'm worried about one of them already because I had the Orioles sweeping the Royals in their series. I do have the Brewers series money line against the Mets. I also took the Padres to sweep the Braves.
And say, Gene, you were right. I'm taking the answer. Like, no, Scooble, no. I saved you today on that.
I didn't want anything to do with that series.
Yeah.
For whatever, I know a lot of people are saying that series looked priced too far in the direction of the Astros. The Astros' history is just a little bit too rich for my blood. And when I saw the number, I'm like, yeah, the Astros, it was like 185 to win that series. I'm like, nah, I'm not paying that price for the Astros. No thanks. So I avoided that series altogether, and Detroit gets the win. 3 more games yet to conclude here as Major League Baseball's postseason underway. The month of October underway. Feels fantastic to be where we are here in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Sure do appreciate you stopping by the Sports Bar and joining us every afternoon from 3 until 6. If you missed Michael F. Florio from NFL Network talking some fantasy football. If you missed Matt Perino, Syracuse.com to talk some Buffalo Bills. And we got some breaking news out of the Buffalo Bills today with the Von Miller suspension for 4 games, violating the NFL personal conduct policy. By the way, you can get those conversations wherever you get your podcasts. Just search out the Sports Bar. That includes the free-to-download Odyssey app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, literally anywhere. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by PJ Glasser, the host of Send It In on the BetQL Network. We'll get some winners for this weekend's action in college and pro football. And the great Maggie Gray from Maggie and Perloff here mornings on The Fan joins us at 4:25 for a State of the Bills. See how Maggie's doing 4 games into this young NFL season. JR Sport Brief next on The Fan.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and